Tonight we're diving deep into Pokemon's darkest conspiracy, the rebirth mechanic revealed. Thank you to those of you who've been joining us consistently. If you're falling asleep with us tonight, let me know in the comments how many nights in a row you've been here. And if this is your first night, just comment day 1. Now let's get back to the video. In the quiet corners of the Kanto region, beneath the cheerful melodies of the Lavender Town radio tower, and far beyond the sterile white walls of the Cinnabar Island laboratories, there is a secret that the Pokémon League does not want you to uncover. We have been told for over 25 years that the cycle of a Pokémon's life is simple. They are born, they battle, they grow, and eventually they return to the Earth. This in the gravestones of the House of Memories and the spiralling towers of Johto. But what if I told you that death in the world of Pokémon is not an ending, but a state of transition? What if the very creatures you carry in your pocket are not the first versions of themselves, but the result of a horrific, ancient, and mechanical process of rebirth that has been hidden in plain sight since the burning of the Brass Tower? Tonight, we are stepping into the long shadows of the Pokémon world to investigate the darkest conspiracy ever conceived in the history of the franchise. We are moving past the surface-level Pokédex entries and diving into the hidden mechanics of the rebirth theory. This is not just a story about legendary birds or the flickering spirits of ghosts. This is an exploration of a world where the line between biological life and programmed resurrection has completely blurred. We are going to look at the terrifying implications of Ho-Oh's power, the hidden data within the original red and blue cartridges that suggests a much more sinister origin for legendary transformations, and the fan-driven lore that has unearthed a mechanical cycle of suffering that connects every single generation of the games. Think about the 3 beasts of Johto. We are told they perished in a fire and were resurrected by the rainbow wings of Ho-Oh. But have you ever stopped to ask what they were before the fire? Have you ever considered the cost of that resurrection? In the world of Pokémon, energy is never lost, it is only transferred. To bring something back from the brink of non-existence requires a sacrifice of equal magnitude. When we look at the mechanics of the awakening phenomenon and the strange, distorted evolutions found in the forbidden reaches of fan-created regions like Reborn, a pattern begins to emerge. It is a pattern of structural collapse and forced renewal. It is the idea that the world itself must die and rise from its own ashes in a never-ending loop of destruction and rebirth. This journey we are embarking on tonight is not a short one. We have over 4 hours of deep lore, mechanical analysis, and atmospheric storytelling ahead of us. We are going to deconstruct the very fabric of the Pokémon universe, from the ancient myths of Sinnoh to the high-tech experiments of the Ether Foundation. We will ask the questions that the professors refuse to answer. Why do certain Pokémon only evolve when traded through a machine? What is the true nature of the Link Stone? And most importantly, if a Pokémon is reborn, is it still the same creature? Or is it merely a hollow vessel carrying the memories of a life that ended in agony? As the world outside grows quiet and the lights dim, I invite you to settle in. Let the hum of the tall grass and the distant cries of the wild settle into your mind. We are going to travel through the history of a world that is much older and much darker than the bright colours of the television show would lead you to believe. We are looking for the truth behind the phoenix. We are looking for the origin of the soul in a digital landscape. We are uncovering the rebirth mechanic. The stakes could not be higher. If this theory holds true, it changes everything we know about our relationship with our partners. It suggests that every time we heal a Pokémon at a centre, every time we use a max revive, and every time we witness a legendary intervention, we are participating in a cycle that defies the natural order of the universe. We are playing with a power that was never meant for human hands. The mystery deepens when you realise that the architecture of the Pokémon world, The very towers and gyms we traverse may be designed to facilitate this constant state of death and renewal. Why does the tower in the Johto region rise again and again? Why do the earthquakes in the reborn region seem to follow a deliberate path of sabotage? There is a force at work here that is far more calculated than mere nature. It is a mechanical necessity. It is a design. And as we peel back the layers of this conspiracy, you will find that the darkness does not come from the ghost types hiding in the rafters, but from the very light that claims to bring life back to the fallen. So prepare yourself. We are going to walk through the fire of the brass tower. We are going to witness the awakening of the ancient sleepers. We are going to explore the adverse effects of the berserk gene and the price of ultimate power. This is the definitive deep dive into the darkest corners of Pokémon lore. This is the rebirth mechanic revealed. Let the journey begin. Ecruteak City clings to the shadows of Johto's past like mist to ancient stone, its fog-shrouded streets hiding a wound that never fully healed. Over 150 years ago, the brass tower, twin to the gleaming bell tower, stood tall as a beacon for the divine, a spire crafted by hands that dared to touch the heavens. But one fateful night, lightning cracked the sky and flames erupted from within, devouring everything in their path. You can picture it now, the air thick with the acrid bite of smoke, as the wooden beams groaned under the inferno's weight. The tower, once alive with the hum of sacred rituals, twisted into a pyre that lit the night like a fallen star. Screams echoed from the city below, human and Pokémon alike, as the structure buckled, sending embers swirling into the storm. By dawn, only charred ruins remained, a skeletal finger accusing the gods themselves. This was no mere accident. Whispers persist of sabotage, and of rival clans or envious forces igniting the blaze to shatter Ecruteak's spiritual heart. The city, already steeped in mysticism, with its dance theatres and ghostly kimono girls, fell into a hush that lingers to this day, as if the very ground mourns. The elders spoke of it in hushed tones for generations, passing down tales of the brass tower's fall, not just as tragedy, but as the cradle of something far more ominous. Ecruteak wasn't always this quiet sentinel of history. It thrived as Johto's nexus of legend, where the burned tower and its counterpart channeled the rainbow spirit of the skies. Artifacts unearthed from its base, jade amulets etched with thunder motifs, feathers singed at the edges, hint at rituals that summoned otherworldly guardians. Yet the fire stole more than stone and timber. It claimed lives that the annals refused to name outright. Deep in those ruins, 3 creatures perished, their forms lost to the blaze before any scribe could etch their titles into legend. They weren't the beasts we know today, not yet. Nameless wanderers of pure elemental fury, drawn to the tower's sanctity like moths to flame. One crackled with untamed lightning, its fur a storm cloud, alive with electric veins. Another embodied the earth's molten rage, paws that scorched the earth with every step. The third flowed like liquid moonlight, graceful and elusive, guardian of purifying waters. Chosen for their untainted spirits, they had sought refuge in the tower's peak, only to meet their end amid the roaring heat. Their cries, say the old scrolls, shook the foundations before silence claimed them. Bodies reduced to ash, essences scattered on the wind. For weeks Ecruteak languished in grief, the air heavy with soot and sorrow. Pilgrims turned away from the blackened husk, fearing curses woven into the cinders. But then came the turning point, the moment etched as the first recorded intervention of Ho-Oh, the rainbow Pokémon, Lord of Rebirth itself. A colossal shadow eclipsed the sun, wings unfurling in a cascade of prismatic light that pierced the gloom. Ho-Oh descended, its cry a symphony of renewal that rippled across the land, mending wilted fields and coaxing life from barren soil. In a blaze of divine fire, not destruction, but creation. It breathed life back into the ashes. Those three nameless creatures rose anew, transformed by the god-bird's grace into Raikou, Entei, and Suicune, the legendary beasts forever bound to their saviour's will. Raikou, the thunderclap incarnate, bolts across storms with eyes like forked lightning. Entei, volcano-hearted, roars flames that warm rather than consume. Suicune, the north wind's whisper, trails auroras of crystal water, cleansing all it touches. Eyewitnesses from Ecruteak's outskirts swore the air shimmered with otherworldly energy, the ground trembling as ethereal forms coalesced from smoke. Ho-Oh's resurrection wasn't mere revival. It rewove their very souls, imprinting a mechanic of eternal rebirth that echoes through Pokémon lore. Yet divinity demands a toll, and this miracle carried shadows beneath its glow. The beasts, yanked from death's embrace, could never fully reclaim their mortal peace. They became restless wanderers, denied true rest, their forms flickering between life and the void. Ho-Oh's power, immense as it was, left fractures, instabilities that hint at the darker underbelly of rebirth. Why did they flee into the wilds, never returning to Ecruteak? What price did the rainbow Pokémon exact for defying mortality? These questions linger like ghosts in the burned tower's eaves, where trainers still report fleeting glimpses of spectral flames. The silence of the tower endures, a monument to loss and uneasy revival, pulling you deeper into Johto's concealed truths. But what unfolded in that divine act, the precise anatomy of Ho-Oh's miracle, the hidden mechanics that birthed immortals from cinders, unravels next in Chapter 2, the anatomy of a miracle. Stay with me as we dissect the resurrection's core and uncover the chilling cost that binds every reborn soul. Those three nameless creatures reduced to smouldering husks in the brass tower's inferno. He should have been gone forever. Charred bones scattered across Ecruteak's scorched stones, their life force extinguished in a blaze that swallowed the night sky. Yet dawn broke on something utterly alien. Three colossal forms streaking across Johto's horizon, vital, roaring with elemental fury. Suicune, Entei, Raikou, born not from eggs or nests, but from the pyre itself. You can almost feel the heat still lingering in the air, that acrid smoke curling like vengeful spirits. Eyewitnesses from Ecruteak whispered of shadows twisting unnaturally amid the embers, forms elongating, fur sprouting where only ash had been moments before. No gestation period, no parental lineage traced back through Pokédex records. These weren't evolutions or migrations. They erupted fully formed, adults in their prime, sprinting at speeds that cracked the earth. Biologically, this defies every law we know of Pokémon physiology. Consider the cellular blueprint of any creature in our world, or theirs. Life demands a scaffold. DNA uncoiling in embryonic fluid, mitosis firing in precise sequence over weeks, months even. Pokémon hatchlings emerge vulnerable, scales soft, instincts raw. But these beasts? Their sudden appearance shatters that template. Muscle tissue denser than Tauros herds, organs pulsing with auroras of pure energy. Autopsies on ordinary fire victims, say a charred Growlithe, reveal protein denaturation, enzymes fried beyond repair. Necrosis sets in seconds, cells lysing into sludge. Revival? Impossible without external rewriting at the quantum level. No known berry, no TM, no fossil revival tech matches this. It's as if the universe hit reset on their very atoms, defying entropy itself. And yet the scrolls of Ecruteak's bell tower scribes log it plain, approximately 150 years before a trainer would chase badges in gold and silver. These apparitions claimed the skies. Farmers in the fields below clutched their tools, mouths agape, as thunder cracked without clouds and rivers boiled upstream. The biological impossibility stares back from every Pokédex entry. Suicune's crystalline purity, Entei's volcanic mane, Raikou's electric hide, all manifesting without a single precursor cell documented. No nests raided, no ultra wormholes spitting them out. They were the tower's dead, transmuted. This isn't random resurrection. It's an orchestrated cycle etched into the elements themselves. Entei ignites the first stage, the spark of rebirth from destruction's core. Picture his form coalescing first amid the hottest coals, fur igniting like phoenix down, eyes blazing with the fire that slew him. Fire as catalyst, consuming the old to birth the new, purging impurities in a blaze that sterilizes and renews. He's the Inferno's heart, raw energy unbound, galloping across charred plains to fan flames into fertile soil. Without Entei's fury, no cycle begins. He's the big bang of renewal, explosive, unrelenting. Then surges Raiko, the electric pulse that animates the void. As Entei's heat fades, storm clouds gather unbidden, his paws sparking tempests that lash the horizon. Lightning as life force, synapses firing across barren neural wastelands, jump-starting hearts, long stilled. In the lore, Raikou embodies that galvanic shock, veins crackling with plasma hotter than magma cores. He charges through the aftermath, electrifying the air, infusing momentum where stillness reigned. It's the second stage, activation, where potential energy converts to kinetic roar, awakening what fire alone couldn't sustain. Suicune completes the triad, the aqueous veil that seals and purifies. She glides in last, her stream of crystal water washing away the scorch marks, cooling embers to mist. Water as the final renewal. Hydrolysis breaking down scarred tissues. Osmosis flushing toxins, birthing clarity from chaos. Her presence turns floodplains lush overnight, rivers reversing course to follow her stride. Together, they form the elemental stages of a rebirth cycle. Fire to destroy and initiate, lightning to empower and vitalize, water to cleanse and perpetuate. A perfect loop, mirroring nature's own tempests, forest fires yielding to rains, storms sparking growth, but scaled to legends, impossibly precise. Whispers among Johto's elders point to the trigger, the rainbow wing, that shimmering feather plucked from Ho-Oh's plumage as the rainbow Pokémon wheeled overhead, descending like a divine scalpel through the smoke. Not mere plumage, but a conduit humming with photonic energy, iridescent hues fracturing light into regenerative spectra. Folklore claims it brushed the ashes, igniting a cascade no lab could replicate. Delve deeper into its properties, and you uncover the hidden connection between the rainbow wing and cellular regeneration. Ho-Oh's feathers aren't ornaments, they're prisms of otherworldly biology. Each barb encodes a lattice of nanocrystals, refracting sunlight into wavelengths that penetrate cellular membranes, ultraviolet for DNA repair, infrared for mitochondrial boost. In the tower's ruins, that wing hovered, bathing the remains in a kaleidoscope glow. Cells you'd think long dead, they quivered, nuclei swelled, telomeres elongating against all decay. It's targeted photobiomodulation on a mythical scale, stem cells proliferating from vaporized tissue, epigenetics, flipping switches to legendary blueprints. The wing's aura, lore suggests, floods the system with telomerase analogues, halting senescence, rewriting genomes mid-apoptosis. Ordinary Pokémon exposed to similar energies, like a sunstone, evolve gradually. Here, it's instantaneous metamorphosis, beasts ascending tiers in heartbeats. Eyewitness sketches from the era depict the feather pulsing, veins of light threading into the ground, pulling spectral forms upward. Modern theorists in Unova's labs have isolated compounds from Ho-Oh plumage replicas, polysaccharides that mimic growth factors, triggering angiogenesis from nothingness. Blood vessels weaving through vacuum, nerves synapsing across voids. The rainbow wing doesn't just heal, it reprograms reality at the subcellular level, turning carbon ash to sapphire hide. But why these three? Why this precise alchemy? Feel the unease settling as the pieces align. Johto's winds carried their howls for weeks, a chorus echoing the tower's lament. Travelers spoke of shadowed wings circling eternally, as if Ho-Oh's gift came laced with vigilance or warning. The cycle feels too engineered, too flawless for accident. What force scripted this anatomy of miracle, bending biology to its will? That question unravels fully in Chapter 3, the rebirth mechanic exposed. What if this wasn't salvation, but a blueprint for something far more insidious, replicable across regions? Stay with me. You won't want to miss how the tower's echo pulses through every game you've played. Those elemental stages of rebirth we just uncovered in Suicune, Entei, and Raikou weren't random miracles. They were the first visible cracks in a far more ancient system, one that lets Pokémon claw their way back from the absolute edge of oblivion. Ho-Oh didn't just revive them after the brass tower burned. It triggered something mechanical, a process etched into the world's hidden code. Deep in the shadowed archives of Ecruteak's bell tower, scholars have pieced together fragments from scrolls predating the League's iron grip. These aren't fairy tales, they're meticulous records of trainers witnessing Pokémon flatline on the battlefield, hearts stilled, only to surge back with flames in their eyes and power unbound. The air thickens with ozone and ash, the ground trembles as if the earth itself recoils, and what emerges isn't the same creature. It's reborn, fiercer, its form twisted into something primal. This is the rebirth mechanic, at its core, a forbidden evolution that flips defeat into dominance. Picture the fallen Pokémon, limp in the dirt, its essence flickering like a candle in a storm. Then comes the surge, a cascade of raw energy, channeling fire, thunder, or ice through its veins. The body convulses, fur ignites, muscles bulge beyond natural limits. In seconds it's on its feet, roaring with a voice that shatters stone. Our stats exploding across the board. Speed triples, attack power surges like a landslide. This is no gentle revival. It's the mechanical transition from a fallen state to a berserk or reawakened form, where every fibre screams with overclocked fury. Ancient scrolls describe it firsthand. One, yellowed and crumbling from the Johto ruins, recounts a warlord's growlithe collapsing mid-battle against a horde of wild Ursaring. The air hummed with latent heat as Ho-Oh's distant cry echoed across the sky. The pup's body arched, flames erupting from its jaws before it ever learned fire spin. It tore through the enemy ranks, eyes glowing crimson, until the berserk state faded and it slept for days, haunted by the power's echo. These accounts litter forgotten tomes, hidden in plain sight among evolution charts and type matchups. Or modern fan lore has only amplified the mystery, pulling from games like Pokémon Reborn, where awakening isn't myth, it's a button you press. Trainers there push their partners to the brink, shattering a crystal shard to unleash it. Stats skyrocket, moves hit like meteors, but overuse cracks the soul. Pokémon turn feral, lashing out at allies, their forms destabilizing into glitches of light and shadow. It's rebirth with teeth, a high-stakes gamble that mirrors those old scrolls perfectly. Why does every retelling, from dusty parchment to pixelated fan games, whisper the same warning? Because the League buried it all. They suppressed records of Pokémon returning from the brink for a reason that chills the blood. Imagine the chaos if every trainer knew their fallen comrade could rise as an unstoppable force. Gym leaders would fall in droves, champions toppled by berserk rampages. The Pokémon League, born from the ashes of those early wars, couldn't risk it. Official Pokédex entries gloss over Ho-Oh's true gift, calling the legendary beasts manifestations of nature's will. No mention of the fire's victims, no diagrams of the berserk surge. Elite Four archives were scrubbed clean around the time the International League formed. just after reports of uncontrolled reawakenings leveled a village in Unova. Trainers who spoke out vanished, their teams confiscated under safety protocols. But the cracks keep showing. In Reborn's shattered world, earthquakes rip the land apart, and awakening becomes survival. A Pokémon pushed too far doesn't just berserk, it warps, echoing the Tower Beast's impossible biology. Entei's molten hide, Raikou lightning mane, Suicune's crystalline purity, all hallmarks of that transition, amplified by Ho-Oh's blessing. Fan communities dissect it endlessly, cross-referencing scroll translations with game data, uncovering patterns the League praise stay buried. Repeated awakenings erode the spirit, turning guardians into monsters, which is why those three beasts roam eternally restless, forever chasing the calm they lost. The suppression runs deeper still. League historians twisted Ho-Oh's lore into a feel-good resurrection tale, omitting the berserk phase's collateral damage. Villages burned, wild packs scattered in fear of rogue reawakenings. One suppressed report from Sinnoh details a Garchomp flatlining against Cynthia's team, only to explode into a hyperform that cratered the battlefield. The Dragon Elite hushed it up, blaming a type resonance anomaly. Yet whispers persist in underground forums where modders code Rebirth into ROM hacks, watching virtual Pokémon rise from digital death, glitching with the same fury. Feel the weight of it now. Every time a Pokémon faints in battle, it's not truly out, it's teetering on that brink, one cry from Ho-Oh's kin away from unleashing hell. The scrolls warn of a threshold, a point where fallen state locks into permanent berserk, no return. That's the darkness the League fears most, the reason they patrol ancient sites with champion-level squads. And lurking in those same suppressed files, tied directly to Rebirth's core, lies the enigma of the Link Stones, artifacts that promise controlled evolutions without the berserk risk. What if the League isn't just hiding revivals, but hoarding the keys to master them? In the next chapter, the Link Stone conspiracy will unravel how these stones could rewrite the entire mechanic, turning every trainer into a god. Or unleashing something far worse. But that mechanical shift from fallen husk to berserk fury in the Awakening Scrolls doesn't stand alone. Hidden within the fractured code of fan-forged worlds like Pokémon Reborn lies a chilling shortcut, one that trainers whisper about in the shadowed alleys of their digital gyms, the Link Stone. This unassuming gem pulses with an artificial glow, handed out like candy in Reborn's war-torn landscape, promising evolution without the ancient rite of exchange. You hold it up to your Pokémon, and instead of the wild chaos of a trade, two souls ripping apart across vast distances, it triggers the change right there in your palm. No partner needed, no distant trainer's bond. Just a cold, crystalline intervention. Consider what evolution truly demands in the wild. It's not mere leveling, not blind exposure to thunder or flame. Natural paths etch themselves through stone, leaf, or sheer time, mirroring the elemental rebirth we traced in the legendary beasts. Suicune's purifying waters, Entei's volcanic roar, Raikou's lightning scar, each a symphony of destruction yielding renewal. Blessed perhaps by Ho-Oh's rainbow wings over the brass tower's ashes. But the Link Stone? It deconstructs that sacred rhythm, positioning itself as a synthetic substitute for natural evolution, a lab-born hack that bypasses the Pokémon's own grind toward transcendence. Whispers from Reborn's devs hint at its origins. Cooked up in desperation amid earthquakes splitting the earth and meteors scarring the sky, a tool to force power from weakened allies when true growth falters. You feel the weight of it, the stone's facets catching dim lab lights, humming with stolen energy siphoned from the region's crumbling core. Trainers clutch them during sieges, watching Kadabra warp into Alakazam without a traded counterpart, Machoke hulking into Machamp, sans the distant handshake. It's efficient, yes, but hollow. The Pokémon's form twists, scales hardening, or wings unfurling, yet something lingers unresolved, like a melody cut short. And here's where the shadows deepen. What if those original trade evolutions, the ones Linkstones ape so brazenly, aren't about partnership at all? Dig into the oldest Pokédex entries, cross-reference with Reborn's lore dumps, and a dark theory emerges. Trade evolutions are actually a form of soul swapping or rebirth. Picture it. Your Pokémon doesn't just change, it dies in transit. The traded shell arrives empty on the other end, a vessel waiting. But the soul, the essence, the spark that Ho-Oh might envy, hurtles through the link cable's void, slamming into its new form across the globe. Haunter trades into Gengar, shedding its gaseous regrets for shadowy dominion. Graveler into Golem, rock cracking open to rebirth as unyielding stone. In this view, every trade machine in every Pokémon Center is a covert altar, facilitating not growth, but transference. The level 99 cap on pre-Evo forms, a safeguard ensuring the soul arrives primed, unburdened by half measures. Fail that, and the swap glitches. Devs buried hints in glitch hunts, trades freezing mid-animation, Pokémon emerging warped, stats inverted. Reborn's Linkstone mimics this, but solo. No second soul to anchor the exchange. Just a one-way rip, forcing the Pokémon's own essence to fracture and reform. You press the stone to its forehead, and for a split second, its eyes glaze, empty, before snapping back fiercer. Did you witness a self-inflicted rebirth, or something far grimmer? Now, peer closer at the fallout. Scattered across regions, ghost-type anomalies haunt the margins. The trade evolutions that never quite landed right. Evidence mounts of incomplete rebirths resulting in the creation of ghost-type anomalies. Take Gengar lines gone wrong. Haunter trades fizzling in hacked ROMs, birthing spectral echoes that drift through Cerulean Cave, phasing through walls, whispering trainers' names. Or Graveler Evos aborted mid-swap, leaving rocky husks infused with grudge energy, shambling as sudden Golurk precursors in Unova's ruins. In Reborn itself, Linkstone overuse ties to the Awakening's dark underbelly. Pokémon push too far berserk not into power, but into ethereal limbo, forms dissolving into ghastly swarms, eyes glowing with the fury of souls half-trapped. Ancient scrolls from Ecruteak, cross-checked with Brass Tower survivor tales, describe similar, beasts that perished in flame but didn't fully rise, lingering as wisps that chilled the rainbow wings bearers. Ho-Oh's blessing demanded perfect alignment. Fires purge, souls release. Tamper with it synthetically, and you spawn abominations. Duskull rattling chains in foggy marshes, born from Machoke trades severed by signal loss. Misdreavus giggling from Kadabra Evos where the psychic surge imploded inward. Feel the chill of Pallet Town Labs at midnight, where rogue coders replicate Linkstones, trading partners overseas only to receive nothing. Empty Pokeballs humming faintly, then shattering to release phantasmal vapors that coalesce into Shuppet, feeding on the aborted rebirth's despair. Johto's Pokegear logs overflow with reports. Traded Porygon glitching into spectral data ghosts, haunting networks as rogue antivirus spirits. Each a testament, the soul swap interrupted, essence splintering into ectoplasm, drawn to the nearest unresolved trauma. This conspiracy threads back to our tower's silence. The three nameless ones burned, but their rebirth via Ho-Oh was pristine, elemental. What if modern trainers, grasping for that miracle, birthed legions of ghosts instead? Linkstones flood black markets now, peddled as evolution cheats, blind to the cost. Your Gengar stares back from the box, purple maw grinning. Did its soul hail from your Haunter, or some forgotten trade casualty, reborn in your hands? These fractured echoes don't fade quietly. They murmur of regions remade in rebirth's image, warped by synthetic sins. Which brings us to Chapter 5, Echoes of the Reborn region, where the fallout reshapes entire worlds in ways that will leave you questioning every Pokémon at your side. If the link stone represents humanity's arrogant grasp at rewriting evolution through soul swapping and forced rebirth, then the reborn region stands as its most horrifying canvas. This fractured land, born from the ashes of Pokémon Reborn's cataclysmic saga, bears scars that pulse with the same unnatural rhythm, a perpetual dance between annihilation and mechanical resurrection. Picture the Obsidia Ward first, where towering factories choke the sky with acrid smoke, their rusted spires piercing clouds that never fully break. Rivers here run black, poisoned by decades of industrial runoff, their waters so toxic that Pokémon who once thrived in the shallows now float belly up, scales dissolving into iridescent sludge. Earthquakes rip through the earth without warning, splitting boulevards and swallowing entire neighborhoods, as if the ground itself rejects the weight of human ambition. In Reborn, nature didn't just suffer, it was systematically unmade, block by block, breath by poisoned breath. Venturing deeper into the Ureali slums, you feel the decay in your bones. Crumbling tenements lean like drunken ghosts, overgrown with thorny vines that strangle rather than heal. The air hangs heavy with the metallic tang of leaking reactors, and beneath your feet, the soil crunches not with life-rich earth, but with shattered concrete and corroded wiring. Pokémon native to these parts, the hardy urban scavengers like Rattata or Zubat, have twisted into feral shadows of themselves, their eyes glowing with a sickly luminescence from radiation exposure. This isn't restoration, it's a mockery where every crack in the pavement weeps oily residue, and every gust carries whispers of what the land once was. Yet, here's the chilling symmetry. The Reborn region's terrain embodies that rebirth cycle we've traced from the Brass Tower's flames to the Link Stone's glow. Death strikes first, vast and indiscriminate, methane explosions in the sewers of Obsidia, flash floods from the poisoned Opal Ward reservoirs, seismic fissures that birth the dreaded water treatment plant's abyss. But renewal follows, not through Ho-Oh's gentle rainbow benediction. No, it's hammered in by steel and circuits, colossal pylons thrust into the earth to stabilize fault lines, their humming generators forcing seismic aftershocks into submission. Geoengineering rigs drill into mountainsides, injecting synthetic minerals to rebuild topsoil, birthing fields of brittle, glowing grass that Pokémon nibble at and convulse. The land dies organically, beautifully even in its agony, then rises as a cyborg abomination, veins of fiber optics threading through petrified roots, solar arrays mimicking fractured leaves. Take the Rhodocrine jungle, or what's left of it. Once a verdant cradle for bug and grass types, now it's a labyrinth of felled titan boas and razorvine thickets, the canopy shredded by experimental defoliants. Sunlight filters through in harsh shafts, illuminating pools of viscous sap that harden into plastic like tar. Attempts at regreening have dotted the expanse with automated hydroponic towers, force-feeding nutrient slurry to clone saplings that wither under artificial lights. These mechanical rebirths sustain a fragile ecosystem, Pokémon lured back only to mutate, parasect husks with circuit-laced caps, scavenging Leafeon whose leaves crackle with embedded LEDs. The cycle repeats, blight claims the wild heart, then pistons and protocols impose a sterile facsimile, ensuring the land never truly heals, only reboots in humanity's image. And woven through this devastation lurks the human hand, not accidental but deliberate. Saboteurs, those shadowy operatives within Reborn's fractured elite, have long targeted any flicker of natural Pokémon restoration. Ancient aquifers, bubbling up clean water after quakes, get dynamited before they can dilute the industrial toxins. Wild groves sprouting post-eruption from Mount Vesuvius, torched with precision incendiaries, their ashes scattered with growth inhibitors. Even Pokémon-led recoveries, swarms of Ordino channeling healing pulses into barren craters are disrupted by EMP bursts from hidden drones, scattering the herds and dooming regrowth. Why? Control. Natural renewal threatens the monopoly on synthetic rebirth tech, the very link stones and awakening serums profiting the cabal. These acts aren't rage. They're calculated pruning, ensuring the land's agony feeds the machine. In the depths of the abandoned power plant, where sparks dance like malevolent fireflies, you see the apex of this forced renewal. Walls pulse with exposed cabling, feeding into vats where Pokémon fossils are revived, not as primal beasts, but as biomech hybrids, their bones fused with graphene plating. The surrounding badlands stretch barren, winds howling through skeletal girders, yet massive terraforming drones patrol ceaselessly, seeding nanite clouds that knit the soil into conductive grids. Touch the ground here, and it thrums faintly, alive in the worst way, reborn not by life's whim, but by cold calculus, mirroring the soul swaps we uncovered, where essence is extracted, digitized, re-injected. This environmental holocaust in Reborn doesn't whisper, it screams the truth of our conspiracy. The land, like the beasts of the tower or the traded evolutions, is trapped in eternal reboot, death's embrace interrupted by humanity's iron fist. Every stabilized quake, every synthetic bloom, echoes the awakening's berserk fury, power at the cost of purity. But what hidden toll does this frenzy exact on those who wield it? In Chapter 6, The Price of the Awakening, we'll uncover the rot seeping into the trainers themselves, the mutations no link stone can mend. You won't want to miss how the cycle turns inward, as the scarred earth of the Reborn region convulses in its endless cycle of ruin and reluctant revival. You can almost hear the silent screams echoing from beneath the soil. Not just the land, but the creatures themselves, those Pokémon pushed beyond their mortal coils, paying the ultimate price for a trainer's desperate grasp at power. Deep within the shadowed labs of forgotten trainers, the awakening mechanic reveals its cruel underbelly. Force a Pokémon into that berserk state, and yes, every stat surges, attack sharpens to a razor's edge, speed blurs into lightning, defenses harden like unyielding stone. But the body rebels. Muscles fibrillate under the strain, tearing at the seams as raw energy courses through veins not built to contain it. Their fur singes at the edges, eyes bulge with an unnatural crimson glow, and breaths come in ragged, furnace-hot gasps that scorch the air around them. Heart rates spike to impossible rhythms, pounding like war drums on the verge of rupture, while neural pathways overload, sparking hallucinations that blur friend from foe. It's not power, it's a biological wildfire, consuming from within to spit out fleeting glory. Trainers whisper about it in the dead of night, those who've seen their partners collapse after just one push too far. The recovery isn't clean. Pokémon emerge trembling, their once vibrant coats dulled to ash grey, movements jerky as if strings are being pulled by invisible hands. Repeated awakenings carve deeper scars, organs swell with toxic buildup, bones weaken from the constant mineral drain, and the immune system crumbles, leaving them prey to infections that fester like open wounds. You feel it in the way they flinch at sudden lights, their tails drooping, spirits fraying at the edges. This isn't evolution, it's vivisection masked as victory. Take the case of that infamous Rhyperia in the Reborn Underbelly tournaments. Documented in smuggled trainer logs from the meteor-cratered arenas, it started as a loyal behemoth, its rocky hide a fortress for its human companion. 3 awakenings in a single gauntlet, each one boosting its raw power to shatter stadium walls. By the 4th, its roars twisted into guttural howls, eyes vacant as polished obsidian. It pulverized opponents, but afterward, it wouldn't respond to commands. No berries tempted it, no Pokeball could contain the frenzy. Weeks later, scavengers found it rampaging through derelict factories, its identity eroded once a guardian, now a mindless avalanche of stone and rage, lost to the very strength it was forced to wield. Or consider the tragic lineage of those Gardevoir lines chronicled in underground breeding circles. One lineage, traced across 7 battles, endured 6 full reawakenings. The psychic grace that defined them shattered progressively. The first left telekinetic tremors, the third induced phantom pains that made them curl into fetal positions for days. By the 6th, the final Gardevoir didn't recognize its trainer's voice. Its megaform flickered involuntarily, draining life force until it collapsed into a coma from which it never stirred. Eyewitness accounts describe the eyes, once pools of empathetic sapphire, now fractured prisms leaking ethereal mist. Identity didn't fade. It splintered, shards of self scattered across an abyss of borrowed power. These aren't isolated horrors. Scroll through the encrypted forums of ex-reborn challengers, and you'll find dozens more, a salamence whose wings calcified mid-flight after 4 berserks, plummeting into the poisoned Kalos Sea, a Lucario whose aura sensors fried, leaving it blind to all but aggression. Each story ends the same. Pokémon who lost their identity after being reawakened too many times, reduced to hollow shells stumbling through wilds, echoes of what they were. This physiological carnage doesn't stand alone in Pokémon's shadowed history. Look across the regions to Oray's desolate Badlands, and the threads weave tighter. The awakening mechanic mirrors the shadow Pokémon of Oray with eerie precision, those twisted abominations from Cypher's labs infused with synthetic rage to amplify battle prowess at the cost of their very souls. Just as berserk floods a body with unchecked vitality, shadowfication seals away emotions, boosting stats through torment. Reports from Colosseum raids describe shadow Pokémon with the same hallmarks: overheated hides steaming in the desert sun, feral snarls masking suppressed whimpers, and a cold detachment that severs trainer bonds. The correlation runs deeper than coincidence. In Aura, purification rituals echo Reborn's awakening cooldowns, both demanding time to mend fractured psyches. Shadow Pokémon lash out unpredictably, much like over-awakened beasts turning on allies. Cypher scientists even alluded to rebirth serums in leaked datapads, formulas that hijack natural energy flows. Sound familiar? It's as if the awakening phenomenon birthed the Shadow Project, a mechanical evolution of forced power where the toll isn't just flesh, but the heart itself, locked away in darkness. You sense it in the wild packs now roaming Oray's fringes, hybrids of escaped shadows and feral reborn escapees, their eyes holding that same glazed fury. Trainers who dare approach speak of a palpable wrongness, a psychic static that chills the spine, as if the Pokémon are screaming silently for release from their stolen might. Yet, amid this toll, whispers persist of a counterforce, a true renewal that doesn't demand such sacrifice. In the next chapter, The Phoenix and the Flame, we'll uncover the legendary that might hold the key or ignite the final cataclysm. What rises when the fake rebirths fail and only eternal fire remains? Stay with me as the ashes beckon. Those Pokémon who survived one too many berserk awakenings didn't just lose their spark, they became hollow vessels, trapped in a limbo where death refused to claim them, echoing the very curse whispered through Johto's ancient towers. And at the heart of that curse burns Ho-Oh, the rainbow-winged phoenix whose flames don't merely resurrect, but experiment on the boundaries of life itself. Picture the brass tower on that fateful night, roughly 150 years before a young trainer wandered into Ecruteak city. The structure, once a beacon of human ambition piercing the clouds, stood tall against the Johto skyline, its spires gilded by torchlight from below. Then came the blaze, unquenchable, unnatural, birthed from lightning or sabotage, no one truly knows. Flames licked upward in a vortex of orange and crimson, devouring wooden beams that groaned like dying beasts. The air thickened with acrid smoke, carrying the metallic tang of molten iron and charred stone. 3 guardians perished within, noble creatures meant to protect the tower's sacred relics. Their bodies twisted in the inferno, fur singed to ash, eyes glazing over in final defiance. Ho-Oh descended then, not as a divine rescuer cloaked in benevolence, but as a cosmic experimenter, wings unfurling like prisms shattering the night sky. Legends paint this as pure salvation, the phoenix granting rebirth to Suicune, Entei, and Raikou from the embers. But peel back the myth, and you uncover something far more insidious. Ho, O didn't revive them out of mercy. It tested the fragile veil between mortality and eternity, observing how souls could be yanked back from oblivion, reshaped, and released into the wilds to roam as elemental harbingers. Those revived beasts weren't freed. They became living data points in an endless trial, their every sprint across plains, every roar echoing the experiment's success. O perched atop the rebuilt bell tower, eyes like molten gold scanning the horizon, not for threats to humanity, but for variables in its grand hypothesis. Can life be rebooted infinitely without unraveling the cosmos? This brings us to the blessing of protection, that shimmering aura trainers glimpse in Ho-Oh's presence, a radiant shield said to ward off peril. In the darkest corners of Pokémon lore, pieced from fragmented scrolls in Ecruteak's ruins and whispers in Reborn's shattered labs, it revealed as something far crueler, a permanent tether to the mortal realm. Once bestowed, it latches onto the soul like an unbreakable chain forged in rainbow fire. Death becomes impossible, the body reforms from ash, the spirit recoils from the void, pulled back kicking and screaming into flesh. Imagine a Pokémon felled in battle, its essence drifting toward peaceful dissolution, only for the blessing to snag it mid-journey, hauling it through searing pain back to a world of conflict and capture. No rest, no ascension to whatever lies beyond Arceus's domain. Its rebirth as imprisonment, a cosmic anchor ensuring subjects remain available for perpetual study. The legendary beasts, those first recipients, wandered Johto, eternally vigilant, their forms a testament to the tether's grip. Water purified yet restless, fire untamed yet bound, lightning crackling without release. Lugia, Ho-Oh's shadowed counterpart, the guardian of the seas, witnessed this firsthand. From the depths, it felt the phoenix's meddling ripple across the oceans, stirring whirlpools that mirrored the soul tethers churning below. Lugia understood the cycle's horror. Every rebirth strengthened the tether, drawing the mortal realm closer to Ho-Oh's laboratory skies. To break free, Lugia fled to the Whirl Islands, those storm-lashed crags off Johto's coast where tempests rage eternal, and currents drag all downward. There, amid cavernous depths echoing with the sea's fury, it sought isolation, not cowardice, but survival. The island's maelstroms act as a natural barrier, diluting the blessing's pull, allowing Lugia to hover in a fragile stasis, silver wings folded against the cycle of forced renewal. No phoenix flames reach those depths. Only the roar of waves offers a semblance of true oblivion. Yet Ho-Oh's experiment presses on, its gaze ever watchful from the bell tower heights. The revived beasts prowl, trainers unwittingly perpetuate the cycle through battles and captures, and the blessing spreads subtly, perhaps in the gleam of a sacred ash pouch, or the flicker of a revived crystal. Every Pokémon dusted off the arena floor bears a faint echo of that tether, a reminder that rebirth isn't a gift, but a leash disguised as light. As we chase these threads deeper, the timeline unravels further, leading straight into Chapter 8, the 150-year gap, where a chilling void in the records hides what Ho-Oh truly unleashed that night, and why the world almost ended before gold and silver even began. That blessing from Ho-Oh didn't just bind those 3 Pokémon to the mortal plane, it ignited a shadow over Johto that lingered for 150 years. The Brass Tower, once a gleaming spire of brass and ambition, reduced to smouldering ruins after the fire that claimed the lives of the guardians within. Eyewitness accounts from the era, etched into weathered scrolls now gathering dust in Ecruteak's hidden archives, speak of flames that burned unnaturally hot, defying the rain that poured from storm clouds summoned by the distraught land itself. But then, silence. No triumphant rebirth tales echoed through the region. No songs of resurrection filled the festivals, just an empty void stretching across generations. You can almost feel the weight of it in the fog-shrouded mornings of Johto's outskirts, where travelers whisper about the tower's skeletal frame standing defiant against the horizon, its metal bones twisted like the claws of some forgotten beast. Historians piecing together the century and a half of silence following the Brass Tower fire have sifted through merchant logs, temple inscriptions, and fragmented diaries from monks who patrolled the ruins. What emerges isn't glory, but evasion. Official records from the Johto monarchy gloss over the event, attributing the blaze to a lightning strike or careless wanderers. Yet, cross-reference those with survivor testimonies, and cracks appear, mentions of ethereal lights dancing in the smoke, shapes rising and falling back into ash, only to be hushed by decree from the ruling clans. Those monks, sworn to secrecy under oaths to the Rainbow Guardian, documented anomalies in their private journals, Pokémon behaving erratically near the site, flocks of Pidgeot veering away as if repelled by an invisible force, Sudowoodo uprooting themselves to flee the tainted soil. The silence wasn't accidental, it was enforced, a deliberate veil drawn over experiments that spiraled beyond control. Ho-Oh's intervention, that so-called blessing, tethered souls, yes, but at what cost? The three guardians, Raikou, Entei, Suicune, emerged as legends roaming free. But what of the others? The fire didn't just scorch wood and metal, it seared through the veil between life and death, pulling back fragments that refused to reform cleanly. Deep in the Johto wilderness, where the Ilex forest bleeds into jagged cliffs and mist-choked valleys, rumors persist of failed resurrections that roam unchecked. Hikers who vanished only to return hollow-eyed speak of spectral forms, hulking silhouettes that mimic familiar Pokémon but twist in the moonlight. Their fur matted with charred residue, eyes glowing with a fractured rainbow hue. These aren't ghosts in the traditional sense, like the ghastly that haunt Sprout Tower. No, these are echoes of the botched rite, bodies half reclaimed from the pyre, muscles rippling unnaturally under skin that's part ash, part flesh. Local folklore calls them the Ashwalkers, creatures that stalk the edges of civilization, drawn to firelight like moths to their own demise. One tale, passed down by Olivine fishermen, recounts a night when their lanterns attracted a pack of these wanderers, beasts resembling warped Typhlosion, flames leaking from cracks in their hides, but their roars carrying the pained wail of multiple voices layered over one another. They didn't attack, they circled, as if searching for the spark that birthed them before dissolving into smoke at dawn. Trainers bold enough to pursue them with Pokeballs report failures. The devices shatter on contact, circuitry fused as if the creatures reject containment, their essence too volatile for human bonds. These failed resurrections embody the dark underbelly of Ho-Oh's power. Not renewal, but a curse of perpetual unrest, haunting the wilds where no map ventures. Expeditions funded by secretive scholars from the Pokémon League have uncovered more tangible proof buried in the tower's foundations. During a dig in the 1990s, archaeologists unearthed charred remains that don't match any known Pokémon species. Bones elongated and fused, skulls with multiple sockets suggesting eyes that never aligned, rib cages hollowed out as if souls had clawed their way free from within. Carbon dating places them squarely in the post-fire era, their marrow infused with trace metals from the brass structure, hinting at a fusion of Pokémon tissue with the tower's very frame. One specimen, a fragmented jawbone, bore teeth, serrated like no beast alive, etched with faint iridescent patterns that shimmer under UV light, remnants of that rainbow blessing gone awry. Examine the scans closely, and you'll see anomalies. Growth rings in the bones compressed into impossibly short cycles, as if the creatures lived entire lifetimes in days, burning out before they could stabilize. These aren't fossils of extinct lines, they're abortions of the rebirth process, rejects spat back by the cosmos when Ho-Oh's tether snapped under strain. Johto's elders, when pressed in shadowed tea houses, murmur that the wilderness hides dozens more such sites. Shallow graves where the land itself rejects burial, grass withering in perpetual circles around protrusions of blackened bone. This gap, this 150-year chasm, reveals Ho-Oh not as a benevolent phoenix, but a force indifferent to the collateral wreckage of its meddling. The successful trio we celebrate as the legendary beasts, mere survivors amid a graveyard of failures, their freedom bought with the torment of kin that couldn't cross back fully. The silence served a purpose: to bury the evidence, to let time erode the whispers until only myths remained. But those myths endure, fueling night watches where rangers scan the tree lines for unnatural glows, and children are warned from straying too far into the wilds after dusk. As we peel back these layers, the true horror sharpens, not just in the past, but echoing into manipulations that blur the line between natural revival and cold invention. What happens when humans seize that tether, twisting it into something mechanical, devoid of divine whimsy? That's the chilling territory we'll explore in Chapter 9, Synthetic Rebirth, where the ashes of Johto's failures give way to laboratories humming with forbidden ambition. Those whispers of failed resurrections echoing through Johto's tangled wilds didn't fade into myth. They ignited a fire in human ambition, drawing eyes across the sea to Kanto's gleaming towers of industry. Silphco, that monolithic heart of technological hubris, began probing the forbidden edges of creation itself, not with flames or ancient blessings, but with sterile labs humming under fluorescent glare, where scientists stitched life from silicon and code. You can almost feel the chill of those underground facilities, air thick with the ozone tang of overworked servers, as teams poured years into birthing something utterly unnatural, artificial Pokémon. It started small, whispers of prototypes glitching through firewalls, but soon the Porygon project consumed them. Porygon, that polygonal ghost born from pure data, wasn't just a digital pet. It was the first crack in nature's monopoly on life. Programmed to evolve through upgrades, injected into the real world via conversion rays, it defied the wild's rhythms, multiplying into Porygonto and beyond, each iteration a colder mockery of organic growth. Sylph's logs pieced from leaked files and trainer tales, paint rooms filled with hovering holograms that flickered like dying stars, engineers murmuring about self-sustaining algorithms that mimicked heartbeat pulses in binary. But Porygon was merely the proof of concept, a viral seed testing the waters of synthetic vitality. Deeper vaults hid the true horror, attempts to fuse digital blueprints with flesh to engineer Pokémon that could interface with both worlds, rewriting their own DNA on command. Trainers who've scavenged Saffron's ruins speak of discarded husks, glitch-ridden forms that phase through walls before dissolving into static, their eyes locked in perpetual reboot loops. This wasn't evolution, it was assembly line genesis, humans dictating the spark of existence, chasing Ho-Oh's phoenix fire with circuit boards and petri dishes. And as those Johto failures haunted their dreams, the desperation escalated. Far from Kanto's shadows, in Alola's pristine labs, the same madness resurfaced with type, null. Picture it, a creature armored in rejection, its helmet a cage for a mind too volatile to unleash. Created not by whimsy but by a frantic bid to birth a weaponized deity. Type, null stands as humanity's rawest grasp at manufacturing a reborn god. Aether Foundation's black site records, buried under layers of corporate denial, reveal the blueprint, cells harvested from legendary essences, spliced with synthetic suppressants, all to counter invading ultra beasts. They wanted a guardian reborn from the void, immune to types, adaptable beyond nature's limits, silverly in its final form, memory drive slotted like a god's upgrade card. Yet behold the tragedy etched into its form. That crested helm isn't armor, it's a muzzle, clamping down on instincts that could shatter realities. Experiments logs detail the failures, prototypes rampaging through containment, their bodies rejecting the forced divinity, collapsing into quivering masses of incompatible tissue. Type. Null embodies the hubris, a desperate attempt to resurrect godhood on demand, echoing those brass tower rejects but amplified through genetic scalpels. Handlers watched as it paced sterile cells, growling against its bonds, a reborn legend trapped in prototype purgatory, waiting for a trainer's touch to unlock what creators feared. Here lies the razor-thin ethical boundary between evolution and forced biological reconstruction, a line blurred until it bleeds. Natural evolution unfolds in hidden groves, Pokémon shedding skins under moonlit patience, each change a whisper from the world's own will. But reconstruction? That's violation cloaked as progress. Scientists carving into genomes, implanting drives that rewrite affinities like flipping switches, forcing adaptations that scar the soul. Type: Null's evolution to Silverly demands not battle or stone, but a human's bond to remove the helmet, as if trust alone could forgive the original sin of assembly. Porygon's digital lineage fares no better. Upgrades propagate viruses that corrupt networks, turning wild Pokémon into feral data ghosts. Consider the toll on the created. Witnesses from Sylph's downfall recount Porygon strains haunting Bill's PC system, eternally converting between forms trapped in limbo without true rest. Type: Null's lineage carries the weight of suppressed rage. Silverly roams with a hollow gaze, its multi-type prowess a borrowed power, forever marked by the lab's cold cradle. Is this rebirth or eternal undeath? The boundary phrase when you realize every trade evolution from earlier conspiracies might echo this. Souls swapped, bodies rebuilt, all under the guise of growth. Sylph didn't invent life, they hijacked it, and the wilderness now hides the fallout, glitched herds in Kanto's outskirts, chimeric beasts with polygonal scars flickering under moonlight. Trainers who've bonded these synthetics whisper of nightmares, Porygon phasing into dreams, reconstructing memories into fractured code, Silverly's drive humming with echoes of failed gods, demanding fealty. The rebirth mechanic, once Ho-Oh's fleeting grace, warps into this mechanical cycle where humanity's godlings rise not from ashes, but from error logs and ethical voids. And as these artificial harbingers spread, pulling at the fabric of regions long scarred by fire and silence, you have to wonder what endless loop awaits when even failure reboots itself. That question spirals us straight into Chapter 10, the roguelike loop, where death and resurrection twist into an unbreakable game, and one wrong move resets everything you've fought for. Stay with me as the conspiracy uncoils further, while Sylph Co. chased synthetic rebirth in sterile labs, crafting Porygon lines and type Null as makeshift deities. Whispers from the shadows of fan-crafted worlds reveal something far more primal, a tower that doesn't just burn and reform, but devours time itself with every trainer's fall. Deep in the roguelike underbelly of Pokémon fangames, the Tower of Ashes stands as a monolith of unrelenting torment, its spires twisting like charred bones against storm-lashed skies. You enter as a challenger, your team at your side, eyes gleaming with that first-run fire. Floors unfold in labyrinthine fury, traps snapping from rusted grates, wild Pokémon lunging from fog-shrouded alcoves, their cries echoing like accusations. But defeat comes swift, a black screen wipeout as your ace crumbles under a critical hit. And then reset. The tower rises anew from its own ashes, pristine yet poisoned. Every chamber identical down to the flicker of a dying Torchic's flame. Time rewinds not for you, the player, but for the world within, trainers back at their posts, Pokémon respawned in their dens, the cycle grinding on. This isn't mere gameplay convenience, it's the core of the Tower of Ashes theory, a fan-forged nightmare where a trainer's defeat triggers the loop. Picture the mechanics bleeding into lore. Ho-Oh's ancient blessing, that supposed gift from the Brass Tower Inferno, twisted here into a curse. 150 years after the fire that claimed the original trio, the Phoenix's power doesn't liberate, it binds. The tower becomes a perpetual forge, hammering souls through death and dawn. You climb again faster this time, memorizing pitfalls, exploiting patterns. Your Pikachu levels up, sparks brighter with each iteration. But they, your partners, what do they carry across the void? Here's the fracture in the facade, the psychological horror gnawing at the Pokémon trapped in this perpetual loop of death and rebirth. They don't reset clean. In these games, subtle glitches betray the illusion, a Growlithe that flinches at your approach on run 3, as if scorched by a move it remembers from a prior life. A Gengar cackling too knowingly in the upper halls, its laugh laced with the rasp of 1,000 throttled final breaths. Devs embed it deep narrative logs scrawled on walls that shift slightly each loop, hinting at fractured psyches. Your loyal companion, that steadfast Eevee evolving under pressure, starts glitching on the 10th ascent, eyes hollow, moves unpredictable, lashing out mid-battle as if reliving the moment your command sealed its doom. Fans dissect the code, uncovering hidden flags, affection meters that decay invisibly, trust eroding with every forced revival. They're not reborn, they're recycled, ghosts in fresh hides, screaming silently through stats and animations. You push on, addicted to the progress bar of your own survival. But they accumulate the weight, the pain of fainting, the dark of the box, the erasure that never quite sticks. And it's not just the beasts who sense the spin. Narrative breadcrumbs point to certain elite trainers locked in awareness, their dialogues warping across runs like warped vinyl. The first time, the tower's apex guardian sneers your name, generic taunt rolling off scripted tongues. But loop 4? They hesitate, murmuring, "You again?" Same face, same fire types. How many times must we dance this pyre? A mid-floor ace, cloaked in perpetual dusk, drops her guardrail quip for something fractured. My Espeon sees threads. Loops in the rainbow's wake. Ho-Oh's jest, is it? These aren't random flavor, they're deliberate tells, pieced from game files and speedrunner forums. The Elite Four equivalents up top, shadowy figures with teams mirroring the burned trio, greet you with escalating dread. Run 7. Fool climbs eternal. Ashes claim all but memory. Their Pokémon mirror it too, outspeeding impossibly as if anticipating your patterns, revenge for cycles unspoken. One dev interview buried in a 2018 post-mortem hints at inspiration from Johto's lore gaps, those failed resurrections roaming wild, now crystallized in tower sentinels who remember too much. You feel it building, that dread itch as flaws repeat, the metallic tang of ozone from overused thunderbolts, the acrid smoke clinging to your avatar's sprite. Pokémon in these loops don't just fight, they fracture. A Lucario mid-run 20 locks eyes poster feet, aura sensor pulsing erratically, as if mapping the reset's fracture lines. Fans theorize it's Ho-Oh's tether at work, the blessing of protection not shielding from death but enforcing return, a cosmic railroad spiking trainers and teams to the grindstone. Environmental tells amplify it, murals depicting phoenix ascents that char blacker each loop, vines creeping faster as if the tower hungers for conclusion. Your journal entries, meant for player notes, fill with unintended hauntings, ghost text from prior selves, pleading break it, before they forget how to feel. Elite awareness peaks in the pinnacle duel, where the final boss, a Ho-Oh facsimile wreathed in glitch fire, whispers mid-turn, "You've fed the cycle well, climber." But Rebirth devours the reborn. Victory shatters it temporarily, tower crumbles, credits roll but reload, and the ashes stir anew. These trainers aren't foes, they're fellow prisoners. Their elite status are ironic perch above the fray, witnessing eternities you chase blindly. It mirrors Reborn's own cataclysms, earthquakes as loopquakes but weaponized personal. This roguelike prison, with its resetting spires and remembering minds, doesn't end at fan code. Echoes pulse into official shadows, where towers of another kind hold similar secrets. In Chapter 11, the Lavender Town connection, we'll trace how these loops bleed into Kanto's spectral spire, where ghosts don't reset, they haunt forever. Before we dive deeper into this incredible journey, I'm curious, where in the world are you watching this from? Drop a comment below and let our global community know. And if you're finding this as mind-blowing as I am, hit that like button to help more people discover this story. Those endless cycles in the Tower of Ashes leave us questioning every shadowed spire in the Pokémon world, and none more so than the Pokémon Tower in Lavender Town, where the air hangs thick with the scent of wilted incense and forgotten prayers. You can almost feel the chill seeping through the cracked stone walls a perpetual fog rolling in from the nearby radio tower, muffling the cries of souls that refuse to cycle back. This isn't just a graveyard for fallen companions. It's a monument to ambition gone catastrophically wrong. A place where trainers and scientists dared to force rebirth on a mass scale, only to watch it crumble into spectral rage. Picture the tower's 7 floors, each one a layer of desperation built higher after the brass tower's flames had scorched Johto's hopes a century and a half earlier. Whispers from old Kanto archives suggest Sylph Co. Operatives slipped in under the cover of night, hauling prototypes from their Porygon labs, crude resurrection chambers disguised as prayer altars. They promised grieving families a miracle, pump in synthetic life force, mimic Ho-Oh's rainbow flames with artificial ethers, and out would come their beloved Pokémon, reborn and obedient. Floors 1 through 3 held the hopeful cues, incense burners masking the hum of machinery below. But by the 4th floor, the failures piled up, bodies twitching unnaturally, eyes glowing with a cold, mechanical light that no true rebirth should possess. Deeper still, on the upper levels, the experiments turned frantic. Reports from defected Sylph workers describe vats bubbling with digitized souls, pulled from Pokeballs and force-fed into loops mimicking the Rogue Tower's resets, but without the phoenix grace of Ho-Oh. Pokémon that had perished in battles or wild skirmishes were yanked back, their essences fragmented and stitched with code. The air grew heavy with ozone and decay, floors slick with ectoplasmic residue that refused to evaporate. Trainers who visited spoke of shadows lengthening unnaturally, whispers echoing not in grief, but in fury, a chorus rejecting the cold grip of wires and circuits. And at the heart of this catastrophe stands the Marowak ghost, not a victim of the process, but its most defiant saboteur. This lone spirit, bound to the tower's peak, embodies the soul that saw the machinery for what it was, a perversion of nature's cycle, a mechanical resurrection that stripped away will and wildness. Marowak, protector of her young, slain by poachers in the rocky crags outside Lavender, was the perfect candidate in the eyes of the experimenters. They captured her fading essence, fed it into their central chamber, a glowing silo pulsing with stolen life energy, and waited for the glow to stabilize. But she resisted. Her bone club, clutched even in death, cracked the containment field, sending shards of code scattering like cursed shrapnel. What emerged wasn't a reborn warrior, but a vengeful wraith phasing through walls, club swinging with ethereal force, driving the scientists mad and sealing the tower as a no-man's land. Her rejection rippled outward, corrupting the entire operation. Mass rebirth stalled mid-process on dozens of Pokémon, ghastly lines twisting into perpetual haunters, their laughs turning to shrieks of trapped code. The tower became a failed site of mass rebirth, its floors a graveyard of half-formed abominations, souls flickering between deletion and undeath. No amount of Sylph tech could contain it. The mechanical tethers snapped one by one, leaving echoes that chilled the blood of any trainer bold enough to climb those stairs. Lavender Town's radios crackled with static, not from signals, but from the digital ghosts bleeding into the airwaves, a warning broadcast to the world. Yet amid this ruin, one artifact pierced the gloom like a forgotten melody, the Poké Flute. Crafted not in sterile labs, but from ancient Johto reeds, hollowed by winds that once carried Ho-Oh's flames, this simple instrument holds the key no machine ever could. Its notes vibrate on a frequency attuned to the true cycle, the natural rhythm of death dissolving into Earth's hum, rebirth blooming wild and untamed. When you play it in the tower's depths, the ghosts don't shatter, they stir, their fragmented essences realigning, not through force, but resonance. The Marowak spirit pauses her assault, club lowering as the melody threads through her rejection, reminding her core of the wild pulse she once knew. It's the only tool capable of waking the cycle because it bypasses the synthetic scars, calling forth the primal ether that Ho-Oh once blessed untainted by code or control. Floors that once echoed with mechanical whirs fall silent under its trill, allowing Mr. Fuji to emerge from his vigil, eyes wide with the clarity of true release. Pokémon long trapped in limbo phase into peace, their forms dissolving not into deletion, but into the fertile soil of potential return. Wild, fierce, unbound. The flute doesn't resurrect. It awakens the cycle's memory, proving that forced revival breeds monsters, while nature's song heals the rift. Lavender Town stands as testament, meddle with the mechanic, and souls like Marowak's will haunt you eternally, club raised against the hubris. This fragile harmony teeters on the edge, though as darker forces eye the tower's buried tech for something far more devastating. Up next, Chapter 12, The Ultimate Weapon, where we uncover the cataclysmic fusion of Sylph's failures and Ho-Oh's stolen fire, a device that could reset not just towers, but the entire world. What happens when rejection turns to apocalypse? Stay with me. From the shadowed heights of Lavender Tower, where the Marowak ghost lingers as a defiant echo, refusing the cold grip of mechanical revival, our trail of fractured resurrections leads us across oceans and centuries to the ancient kingdom of Kalos. You can almost feel the weight of that rejection in the mist-shrouded air, a soul screaming no to the machines that promise life but deliver something hollow. Yet, what if one man pushed that defiance aside, forging a device so potent it shattered the very boundaries of death, for a price that scarred the land forever? Deep in Kalos, 3,000 years ago, war raged like a living inferno. Armies clashed under skies choked with smoke, Pokémon and trainers alike falling in endless waves. At the heart of it stood King Aze, a ruler whose grief twisted into obsession. His beloved Floette, a tiny guardian of fragile blooms, perished on the battlefield, its life snuffed out amid the chaos. You picture him there, armored silhouette against the pyres, clutching that broken flower Pokémon, vowing to defy the gods themselves. From that vow rose the ultimate weapon, a colossal machine humming with forbidden power, designed not for destruction alone, but for rebirth on a scale no one had dared imagine. This machine stands as the pinnacle of the rebirth mechanic, the crowning horror in our conspiracy's arsenal. Towering spires of blackened steel and glowing conduits, it drew from the world's raw essence, pulsing like a mechanical heart buried in the earth. AZ poured his kingdom's genius into it, alchemists chanting over runes, engineers weaving cables through cavernous halls where the air thrummed with unnatural static. It wasn't mere science, it was a ritual, echoing the brass tower's flames and Sylph Co. Sterile labs, but amplified to godlike extremes. The device activated amid the war's climax, its core igniting as battle lines crumbled. And here's the gut-wrenching truth that binds it all. The horrific energy source required to bring a single Pokémon back to life. Not sparks from a battery or blessings from a phoenix, but the harvested life force of thousands, soldiers, Pokémon, entire battalions vaporized in an instant. You hear the screams swallowed by the machine's roar, feel the ground quake as souls were siphoned into its maw, their vitality compressed into a searing plasma that defied mortality. Millions of lives gone in a flash, funneled through crystalline amplifiers to tear open the veil between worlds. One Floette revived, its petals unfurling in ethereal light, scampering back to Aze's side after 3,000 years of wandering. Victory, they called it. But the land wept blood. That triumph hid a deeper abomination, one that festers in Kalos's soil to this day. The machine's overflow birthed the unintended creation of eternal forms, twisted abominations wandering the wilds, their bodies locked in perpetual bloom, flawless yet utterly vacant. These aren't Pokémon, they're echoes without souls, husks animated by residual energy, drifting through Geozenge Valley like ghosts in floral armor. No hunger stirs them, no joy lights their eyes, just an endless, soulless mimicry of life. Trainers who encounter them speak of a chill that seeps into the bones, a presence that stares through you, as if the machine devoured not just bodies, but the sparks of divinity within. AZs wandered after that, machine split into dormant roots snaking through the earth, waiting for another fool to awaken it. His floette fled in horror, unable to bear the stain of those stolen lives, leaving its master to eternal exile. You sense the parallels crashing down, the failed ghosts of Lavender rejecting this fate, the looped agonies of the Tower of Ashes paling against this singular atrocity. Every rebirth mechanic we've uncovered builds to this. Ho-Oh's tethers, Porygon's synthetics, all mere precursors to AZ's cataclysm. One life restored, but at the cost of hollow eternities roaming free. Those eternal forms still lurk, their lack of soul a warning etched in pollen and silence, pulling at the fabric of reality itself. What happens when such distortions bleed into other dimensions, warping time and space beyond repair? That's the nightmare we'll unravel next in Chapter 13, the Distortion World Paradox. That infinite loop of life and death in AZ's machine didn't just demand a Pokemon's life force, it spat out something far worse, a toxic residue that no resurrection process could fully contain. What if that byproduct, that raw rejected essence, doesn't simply vanish into the ether? What if it warps reality itself, pooling in places where the fabric of the Pokémon world frays at the edges? Deep beneath the Sinnoh region, hidden in the shattered remnants of a world turned inside out, lies the Distortion world, a realm where gravity bends like a snapped spine, platforms float in defiance of logic, and colors bleed into their inverses. You can almost feel the chill here, a perpetual twilight where echoes of forgotten battles whisper through the cracks. This isn't some pocket dimension for outcasts, it's the graveyard of botched rebirths, the ultimate cleanup crew for every resurrection gone catastrophically wrong. Enter Giratina, the renegade Pokémon, banished not for malice but necessity. Legends whisper that Arceus, in crafting the balance of creation, couldn't abide the mess of imperfect cycles. Ho-Oh might ignite the spark of renewal atop the bell tower, but when those flames flicker and fail, when a soul clings too fiercely to its mortal coil, Giratina steps in. Picture it, a colossal shadow uncoiling from the void, its crimson eyes piercing the veil between worlds. Giratina serves as the janitor of failed rebirth cycles, sweeping up the shards of Pokémon that shatter under the strain of forced revival. Those brass tower beasts from a century and a half ago, the ones that wandered Johto's wilds as twisted parodies of life, not all made it to redemption. Some resisted, their essences fracturing into something unrecognizable, and Giratina dragged them kicking and screaming into the Distortion. But what lingers behind? You've felt the pull of those failed experiments before, the Marowak ghost haunting Lavender Tower, AZ's eternal war machine fueled by unending grief. When a Pokémon refuses rebirth, its energy doesn't dissipate cleanly. It inverts. It rebels. That vital spark, meant to reignite flesh and spirit, curdles into a seething anti-life force, a shadow twin to existence itself. Trainers who've brushed too close to these sites report it. A nausea that grips the gut, Pokémon suddenly listless, their moves fizzling like wet fuses. In the Distortion world, that energy manifests as rivers of inverted plasma, corroding stone into floating debris, where up is down and time loops in nauseating spirals. This is no mere metaphor. The physical manifestation of antimatter emerges as the brutal byproduct of resurrection, a scientific heresy baked into Pokémon lore. Think back to Silph Co. Porygon folly or type, Null's rage-born creation, each tampering with rebirth-birthed glitches in reality. In Platinum's depths, Cynthia warns of Giratina's wrath, not as petty vengeance, but as containment. That antimatter isn't abstract, it's tangible, a shimmering void stuff that devours light and spawns illusions of the undead. Explorers who've pierced the send-off spring portal describe it clinging to their skin like oil, their shadow Pokémon howling in recognition. One drop of it could unravel a League Champions team, turning evolutions backward, stats plummeting into the negative abyss. Giratina doesn't destroy this refuse outright. That would risk contagion spreading to the surface world. Instead, the renegade patrols its fractured domain, herding these antimatter pools into stasis. You sense the weight of it in battles there. Platforms inverting mid-leap, your Pokemon's cries distorting into alien wails. Cyrus sought to harness this chaos in his new universe bid, blind to the truth that the Distortion world thrives on imbalance, feeding on the refuse of every Ho-Oh miracle that soured. Those roguelike towers we explored resetting in eternal death loops? Their core instability mirrors this, antimatter seepage, trapping souls in denial of rebirth. Yet even Giratina's vigilance has limits. Whispers from Sinnoh's elders speak of breaches, rifts, where rejected energy seeps back, birthing anomalies like the Spiritome, 71 souls fused in vengeful antimatter keening. Feel the dread building as these pools grow, destabilizing regions from Kalos to Johto. The Lavender Ghosts, the Porygon viruses, AZ's weapon, they're symptoms of a larger paradox. Rebirth promises renewal, but its failures birth an opposite force, one that Giratina corrals at great cost, its own form warped by eons of exposure. And as we peer deeper into these distortions, questions mount about origins even older, etched in stone long before towers burned or machines hummed. What secrets do the fossils hold, those petrified echoes of ancient refusals? Up next, the fossil record secrets will unearth truths that make Giratina's janitorial duties look like child's play. Stay with me as we dig into bones that refuse to stay buried. That stubborn energy, the raw essence of a Pokémon that defies Giratina's grim cleanup, doesn't simply dissipate into the Distortion world's shadows. It seeps back into our world, embedding itself in the Earth's ancient layers, waiting for mad scientists to unearth it centuries later. Deep beneath Cinnabar Island's smouldering volcano, where the air hangs thick with sulfur and the ground trembles like a beast stirring from slumber, researchers cracked open the planet's vault. They didn't just dig for bones, they chased resurrection. Fossil Pokémon like Omanite, Kabuto, and Aerodactyl weren't meant to claw their way back from extinction. These creatures hail from an era when life was brutal, primal, untamed by the bonds we trainers forge today. Revived through cloning, their genetic code fractured under the strain of eons compressed into moments. Imagine cells that evolved in a world of endless predation, suddenly shocked into a modern haze of Pokeballs and gyms. That dissonance breeds instability, a core volatility that manifests as primitive aggression. These Pokémon lash out not from malice, but from an atavistic fury, their instincts screaming against the artificial dawn forced upon them. Trainers whisper of battles where a revived Aerodactyl ignores commands, shredding the air with supersonic roars that echo forgotten cataclysms, or Kabutops slicing through foes with scythes honed by survival's cruel forge. But the true horror lies in how Cinnabar's labs bridged the impossible. Those scientists, huddled in labs lit by flickering geothermal glows, didn't rely on pure archaeology. Whispers from leaked manifests suggest they laced the cloning vats with something divine, something forbidden, traces of Ho-Oh's DNA. The rainbow Pokémon, guardian of rebirth, whose sacred ashes once revived the burned tower's fallen guardians. Ho-Oh's essence, meant for pure renewal, got twisted in human hands. They harvested feathers from distant Johto peaks, or so the theory goes, grinding them into a shimmering elixir to kickstart dormant genes. It worked too well. Fossil Pokémon stirred to life, feathers faintly iridescent in their hides, but the mismatch was catastrophic. Ho-Oh's rebirth fire clashed with prehistoric savagery, creating hybrids that burned from within. Reports from the island's evacuation speak of containment breaches, where cloned beasts rampaged with eyes glowing like embers, their aggression amplified by a godly spark they were never built to contain. This fusion unearths an even darker thread, one tying the skies to the depths. Aerodactyl, that pterosaur terror with wings like jagged obsidian, stands as the missing link to the ancient awakened dragons. Long before recorded history, when continents heaved and skies wept fire, colossal dragons slumbered in earthen crypts, their power sealed until some cataclysmic event stirred them. Legends from Unova's deepest lore hint at these beasts, precursors to Rayquaza and Reshiram, locked away after a war that scarred the world. Aerodactyl's fossil beds overlap those sites precisely, its skeletal imprints entwined with draconic relics too fragmented to identify. What if Aerodactyl wasn't just a predator, but a sentinel? Cloned with Ho-Oh's rebirth catalyst, it awakens echoes of those dragons. Berserk rages that pulse with primordial commands. Expeditions to the Sevii Islands uncovered amber shards preserving Aerodactyl tissue, laced with scales no known reptile should bear, glowing faintly under black light as if calling to something vast and buried. Picture the lab techs, sweat slicked in hazmat suits, watching vats bubble with a rainbow-tinged slurry. The first Omastar breached, its tentacles thrashing not in confusion, but in a frenzy mimicking deep-sea hunts from 500 million years past. Instability wasn't a bug, it was the feature. Ho-Oh's DNA provided the spark, but the fossils supplied the fuel, rage distilled over geological time. Trainers who captured these anomalies reported nightmares, Pokémon that reverted mid-battle, shells cracking to reveal molten veins, aggression spiking until they collapsed, only to reform stronger, hungrier. Cinnabar's fall wasn't volcanic, it was biblical, a rebuke from forces older than the magma flows. And Aerodactyl. Its revival unlocked vaults we shouldn't have touched. Those awakened dragons, sealed after defying the natural cycle, left genetic echoes in Aerodactyl's frame, rock-hard hide over lightweight bones, perfect for soaring through apocalypses. Infused with Ho-Oh's essence, it becomes a vessel, channeling draconic fury that makes modern legendaries seem tame. Fossils from Mount Moon to the Orange Archipelago show bite marks, too massive for contemporaries, wounds from behemoths that stirred once and slumbered again. Cloning didn't resurrect them, it primed the pump, letting unstable echoes bleed into our timeline. The pattern repeats across Kanto's underbelly. Fossil Pokémon don't adapt, they regress, their primitive aggression a safeguard against Rebirth's violation. Ho-Oh's stolen spark ensures they rise. But at what cost? Cinnabar's ruins still hum with residual energy. Scanners picking up Ho-Oh's signature mingled with ancient dragon roars, buried just beneath the ash. This instability, this godly tampering, it all points to a deeper genetic trigger lurking in the code. In the next chapter, the berserk gene, we'll uncover how that volatile spark ignites a chain reaction no trainer can control, turning loyal companions into unstoppable forces of chaos. You won't believe what happens when it fully awakens. Those Cinnabar Island labs, humming with the illicit pulse of Ho-Oh's cloned essence, didn't stop at resurrecting ancient bones. They pushed further into the forbidden alchemy of genetic supremacy, where a single aberrant strand would redefine rage itself. What emerged from those sterile chambers wasn't just Mewtwo, the pinnacle of artificial godhood, but a rogue fragment of its creation process, the berserk gene, a microscopic time bomb spliced directly from the Mewtwo experiments. Picture the scene in the dead of night, fluorescent lights flickering over vats of bubbling pink slurry. Team Rocket's lead geneticists, under the watchful eye of Giovanni himself, had been wrestling with Mew's DNA for months. They sought perfection, a Pokémon unbound by nature's limits, engineered for war. But perfection breeds monsters. During the final infusion phase, when Mewtwo's embryonic form convulsed in its tube, sensors spiked with an anomaly, a hyperactive sequence in the genome that triggered explosive neural overload. They isolated it, named it the berserk gene, and rather than destroy it, they weaponized it. Harvested from the very dregs of Mewtwo's rage-filled awakening, this gene was no accident. It was the echo of psychic fury unbound, a deliberate extraction meant to replicate that raw power in lesser subjects. Trainers who stumbled upon remnants of those experiments, perhaps a discarded vial from a raid on the Cinnabar gym, found the berserk gene item tucked away in hidden caches. Equip it on a Pokémon, and you unleash a shadow of Mewtwo's birth throes, temporary stat surges across the board. Strength, speed, defense, all amplified in a haze of feral intensity. But this wasn't benevolence. It was borrowed apocalypse. The gene hijacks the Pokemon's nervous system, flooding synapses with synthetic adrenaline analogues derived from Mewtwo's unstable hybrid code. Your loyal companion doesn't just grow stronger, it reverts, clawing back to a primal state where survival overrides sentience. This frenzy bears an uncanny resemblance to the awakening phenomenon ripping through the reborn region's shattered streets. In that forsaken fangame world, where pollution chokes the sky and meteors scar the earth, trainers force their Pokémon into berserk states through sheer willpower and desperation. Stats balloon identically, every metric pushed to breaking point, but at a cost that mirrors the berserk gene's curse. Awakening isn't rebirth, it's a violent parody, a chemical resurrection that drags the Pokémon kicking and screaming from dormancy into overload. Reborn's developers drew straight from this dark well, encoding the mechanic as a nod to Cinnabar's sins. Overuse it there, and your Pokémon doesn't just faint, it fractures, echoing the gene's legacy of induced madness. What makes this convergence so chilling is the science beneath it all. Artificial stat boosting, whether through the berserk gene or Reborn's awakening, inflicts permanent neurological damage that no Pokéball can heal. Neural pathways scorch under the strain, dendrites fray like overtaxed wires, dopamine receptors burn out, leaving a Pokémon perpetually agitated, its temperament warped into aggression. Studies from black market labs, whispered about in Kanto's underbelly, reveal the scars, elevated cortisol levels that never recede, erratic firing in the amygdala equivalent, turning once docile creatures into ticking threats. Mewtwo's gene doesn't enhance, it erodes. A Pikachu dosed repeatedly might zap its trainer in sleep, mistaking ally for enemy. A Venusaur could rampage through forests, vines lashing without command. This is the rebirth mechanic's underbelly. Life forced back, but twisted, unstable, forever haunted by the boost that broke it. Delve deeper into the logs smuggled from Cinnabar, and you uncover trial data that chills the blood. Subject after subject, from Rattata to Raiden, equipped with the gene, showed initial euphoria, power levels off the charts, victory after victory in simulated battles. But by the third activation, anomalies appeared, tremors, phantom pains, eyes glazing with vacant fury. By the 10th, euthanasia was the mercy. The geneticist noted it plainly. Sustained berserk states mimic epileptic cascades, culminating in cortical atrophy. In other words, the brain withers. Mewtwo endured because it was built transcendent. Your Pokémon aren't. They pay the price in shattered psyches, a living testament to humanity's hubris in playing God. Reborn's awakening amplifies this horror on a societal scale. Trainers there, cornered by the region's apocalypse, push the mechanic until their teams devolve into feral packs. The lore hints at it. Pokémon abandoned in alleys, twitching from overuse, their boosted forms a cruel illusion of strength masking the rot within. It's no coincidence the berserk gene surfaced in item drops mimicking Mewtwo's lab leavings. It's the conspiracy threading through, from Kanto's clones to Reborn's ruins. Ho-Oh's renewal twisted into aggression. Fossils unstable, now genes that promise power but deliver decay. Every surge is a step closer to the void, where rebirth isn't salvation but slow annihilation. And lurking in the canopy shadows, watching these genetic abominations unfold, waits the guardian of the forest. In Chapter 16, we'll uncover how this ancient sentinel counters the very madness we've unleashed, but at what hidden price? That uncontrollable frenzy sparked by the berserk gene, echoing the chaotic awakenings in the reborn region's shattered landscapes, forces us to wonder if there's a gentler path hidden in Pokemon's ancient wilds, one that doesn't tear a soul apart but mends it through time itself. Deep in Johto's Ilex forest, where sunlight fractures through a canopy so dense it feels like twilight at noon, stands a shrine untouched by human hands. Moss-cloaked stones circle a pedestal etched with spirals that seem to pulse faintly in the humid air, as if breathing with the forest's heartbeat. This Ilex forest shrine isn't just a relic, it's whispered among the oldest lore keepers to serve as a gateway for souls awaiting a new body, a liminal space where the essence of departed Pokémon lingers, not trapped in grief like the ghost of Lavender Tower, but suspended in quiet anticipation. Guarding this threshold is Celebi, the guardian of the forest, a diminutive psychic grass type whose pink wings shimmer like dew-kissed petals. Unlike the mechanical monstrosities of Azid's ultimate weapon or the volatile clones from Cinnabar's labs, Celebi embodies purity and renewal. It doesn't claw life back from oblivion with raw energy or forbidden DNA. Instead, Celebi's ability to pull Pokémon from the past stands as a clean form of rebirth, plucking them from moments before their doom, before the fire, the battle, the fade into shadow. Picture the forest floor alive with fireflies that aren't insects at all, but echoes of Celebi's traversals, tiny rifts in time where a Pikachu from a century ago darts playfully, or a Chikorita nuzzles against bark that hasn't rotted yet. This isn't resurrection forged in flames, it's prevention woven into the timeline. A soul doesn't endure the agony of piecing together shattered flesh, as with Ho-Oh's rainbow wing miracles. No, Celebi slips through temporal folds, extracting the unaltered spirit and form from history's safer chapters, depositing it whole into the present. Clean. Seamless. The forest thrives because of it, vines curling protectively around these time-displaced wanderers, integrating them without the scars of loss. But harmony fractures when you set Celebi's ethereal dance against Ho-Oh's thunderous interventions. Ho-Oh, the rainbow Pokémon soaring above the charred ruins of the Brass Tower, channels physical resurrection, a brutal alchemy of ash and sacred fire that birthed the legendary beasts from 3 warriors consumed by inferno flames 150 years before Gold and Silver's tale unfolded. Those beasts emerged fierce, their bodies remade but imprinted with the blaze's fury, Entei's volcanic rage, Raikou lightning scars, Suicune's purifying torrent born from toxic smoke. Ho-Oh's gift demands a vessel rebuilt from ruin, energy siphoned from the Earth's core, leaving echoes of trauma in every revived heartbeat. Here lies the conflict between Celebi's time travel and Ho-Oh's physical resurrection. 2 titans of renewal, clashing in Johto's shadowed lore. Celebi whispers of avoidance, sidestepping death's door by borrowing from what was, preserving innocence unmarred. Ho-Oh roars of defiance, hauling the dead back through sheer will. But at what cost? The beasts prowl eternally restless, their rebirth a cage of fire-tainted memory. Why revive the burned husk when you could summon the unburned echo? Whispers in Ilex's glades suggest the forest guardian views Ho-Oh's method as reckless, polluting the soul's purity with mortal remnants, while the rainbow Pokémon might see time meddling as cowardice, dodging the true test of life's forge. Venturing deeper into the shrine's lore, travelers speak of Celebi's court, a parliament of spectral forms orbiting the pedestal, souls queued not in torment but in patient mist. A departed bayleaf might hover here, its grassy essence coiling lazily, waiting for Celebi to rewind to its sapling days, and fast-forward it anew into fertile soil. No fossil instability, no berserk overloads, just the soft hum of chronal energy, leaves rustling in reverse as timelines braid. This gateway filters the unworthy, those 2 entangled in Ho-Oh's fiery rebirths perhaps rejected, their aggressive primitives funneled elsewhere, to Cinnabar's vats or Giratina's distortions. Yet tensions simmer beneath the canopy. Encounters with Celebi often coincide with Ho-Oh sightings over the horizon, as if the Guardians vie for Johto's lost. One fan dissection of the game's hidden texts posits a suppressed event, a Pokémon caught in both rites, half-time pulled, half fire-forged, unraveling into paradox, a glitchy abomination that Celebi sealed back into the shrine's stones. The air grows thick then, pollen heavy with unresolved grudge, fireflies flickering erratically like warning signals. Feel the damp earth underfoot, the shrine spirals warming to your touch, as if Celebi assesses your own timeline for worthiness. Souls press close, Not accusatory like Marowak's shade, but curious, tendrils of aura brushing your skin with forgotten meadows. This is Rebirth refined, the forest's antidote to humanity's crude hacks, from Mewtwo's gene splices to AZ's blood engines. Celebi ensures the cycle spins pure, pulling saviors from antiquity to mend what Ho-Oh's blaze might scorch anew. And as these temporal threads weave tighter, pulling us toward transformations that blur evolution's very edges, prepare yourself for the next revelation in the alchemy of evolution, where stones and bonds unlock secrets that make even Celebi's time slips seem straightforward. While Celebi weaves rebirth from the fragile threads of time, pulling Pokémon back without a single scar, Ho-Oh's sacred fire demands the raw churn of death and renewal, bodies rising from charred bones in the shadow of the brass tower. Yet neither touches the quiet alchemy humming beneath every evolution in the Pokémon world, that hidden forge where base forms transmute into something greater, always at a cost veiled in mystery. Consider the evolutions that shake the very foundations of a trainer's journey. Kadabra stares at its spoon, bending reality until it splits into Alakazam, but only after forsaking the wild freedom of its Abra days, surrendering to the weight of psychic potential that warps its mind forever. Or Machoke, bursting its belt in a spray of superhuman strength to become Machamp, trading the restraint of 4 contained arms for unchecked power that could crush mountains, or its own trainer in a moment of rage. These aren't mere level-ups, they're rituals, ancient processes echoing the alchemist's dream of turning lead into gold. Deep in the fractured streets of the reborn region, where the earth itself rebels with quakes and poisoned skies, trainers discovered link stones, crystalline relics that shatter the old rules of trade evolutions. No longer must you ship your Pokémon across seas to some distant lab, severing bonds in the name of progress. Instead, these stones pulse with an inner light, forging the change right there in your palm. They're the Philosopher's Stone made manifest, that legendary elixir promising transmutation without the endless toil, yet carrying the same whisper of forbidden power. In Pokémon Reborn, a Link Stone turns Haunter into Gengar without a trade partner, binding the ghost's malice directly to your will, as if the stone drinks in the loneliness of isolation and spits out perfection. But perfection never comes cheap. These stones glow brighter with each use, rumors swirling that they feed on the echoes of failed evolutions, the souls that crumbled under the strain. This brings us to the unyielding truth at the heart of it all. Every major Pokémon transformation demands sacrifice. Stone evolutions consume the item itself, crumbling to dust as Firestone melts into Flareon's fiery hide, or Thunderstone fractures into the electric fury of Jolteon. Trade evolutions rip the Pokémon from your team, forcing it into the void of a PC box or a stranger's hands, a temporary death that births Haunter's final form or Graveler's rocky behemoth. Even level-based shifts hide the toll. Porygon traded with an upgrade disc devours the tech, emerging as Porygon 2 with circuits rewritten, its digital essence forever altered by what it consumed. And don't overlook the mega evolutions, those fleeting rebirths powered by key stones that drain the trainer's life force, leaving you faint and hollow after the battle's roar fades. Sacrifice isn't a bug in the system, it's the fuel, the dark alchemy, ensuring no power blooms without something or someone yielding to the fire. Picture the lab-coated scientists on Cinnabar Island, hunched over bubbling vats infused with Ho-Oh's pilfered feathers, cloning fossils that twitch unnaturally because they remember the oceans they drowned in. Their experiments proved it. Force a rebirth without sacrifice, and instability creeps in, aggression bubbling like primordial rage. AZ's learned this the hardest way in Kalos, feeding his machine the lives of thousands to resurrect one Pokémon, only for the cycle to warp into eternal war. The Distortion world swallows the rejects, Giratina's domain bloated with energies too volatile to reform. Sacrifice balances the scales, a cosmic ledger where gain demands loss, keeping the world's fabric from unraveling. Now, turn to those evolutions that whisper of deeper mysteries, the ones hinging on friendship, like Eevee blossoming into Umbreon under the moon's cold gaze, or Golbat shedding its wings for Crobat's loyal flight.
Why high friendship?
Why must the bond burn so fiercely before the change ignites? Here's the soul bond theory, pieced from scattered lore and Reborn's shadowed archives. These Pokémon don't just level up, they merge souls. The trainer pours emotion into the creature, trust forged in battles, nights spent healing wounds under starlit camps, shared victories tasting of sweat and triumph. That friendship isn't affection. It's a sacrifice of self, your fears bleeding into their heart, your resolve tempering their spirit. Only when the soul bond solidifies, a ethereal tether stronger than any stone, does the evolution trigger. Espeon reads your dreams because it carries fragments of your subconscious now. Leafeon draws from shared walks through dew-kissed meadows, its leaves veined with your vitality. Fail to nurture it, and the Pokémon stalls, forever half-formed, a warning that alchemy rejects the half-hearted. In the reborn region's underbelly, where awakening pushes Pokémon to berserk heights at the cost of their sanity, this theory sharpens to a blade. Link stones bypass trades, but demand that soul bond equivalent. Trainers are tuning to their team's pain amid crumbling cities. Overuse the stones and adverse effects mirror the berserk gene. Stats spike, then shatter. Pokémon reverting wilder, hungrier. Ho-Oh's blessing might resurrect the worthy. Celebi might rewind the clock, but Evolution's Forge tests your willingness to give piece of yourself, every glow hiding a shadow of what was lost. These alchemical truths point to experiments long buried, facilities shuttered after disasters too grim to whisper. Up next, Chapter 18, The Abandoned Projects, where we'll unearth the labs that pushed Rebirth too far, and the monstrosities they left clawing in the dark. That sacrifice demanded by the reborn link stones, echoing the Philosopher's Stone itself, wasn't always a willing offering from trainer or Pokémon. Sometimes it came from desperation, from scientists who saw Rebirth not as a gentle cycle, but as a weapon to be forged in hidden laboratories. Deep in the uncharted fringes of the Pokémon world, where official maps fade into rumor, lies the Holon region, a shattered expanse of jagged crystals and humming energy fields, abandoned after a cataclysm no one dares explain. Here, in the shadow of colossal reactors long gone silent, researchers once tampered with the essence of rebirth on a scale that mocked nature's own laws. They called their creations Delta species, Pokémon reborn not through Ho-Oh's sacred flames or Celebi's temporal whispers, but through brutal infusions of pure elemental energy. Picture the labs buried under Holland's fractured earth, sterile chambers pulsing with artificial auras, where scientists captured wild Pokémon and subjected them to forced elemental rebirth. A fire-type Rattata, its body already attuned to flames, would be strapped into a crystalline chamber. Technicians flooded its veins with water essence extracted from distant oceans, distilled into glowing serum. The process wasn't evolution, it was violation. The Pokémon convulsed as conflicting energies warred inside, its fur crystallizing into iridescent scales, flames leaking from gills that shouldn't exist. What emerged was a Delta species, a hybrid abomination, stronger in raw power, but forever scarred by the mismatch. These weren't evolutions guided by stones or friendship, they were rebirths imposed by machine. Holand's core technology drew from forbidden knowledge. Rumors whisper of salvaged Distortion world fragments, funneled through reactors powered by unstable meteorites. A single Pikachu, reborn with ground energy, sprouted stone claws from its cheeks, electricity now arcing through seismic tremors. Charizard fused with psychic waves became a telekinetic blaze, scorching minds as much as flesh. Each success birthed a Delta Pokémon, marked by that eerie Delta symbol on their hides, a brand of their unnatural origin. But success came at a cost that unraveled everything. Investigating the Delta species reveals a trail of classified logs, smuggled out by defectors before the projects collapsed. One entry describes a Venusaur, force reborn with steel essence, its bulb warping into a metallic furnace that melted containment fields from within. The implications terrified even the hardened teams. These Pokémon didn't just adapt, they destabilized reality around them. Energy fields in Hoenn began to bleed, causing spontaneous type shifts in nearby wild Pokémon, Pidgey spitting poison, without ever touching a toxic berry. The Hoenn region's energy experiments pushed Rebirth into overdrive, chaining elemental forces in ways Arceus never intended. Reactors hummed with the stolen life force of hundreds, siphoned to fuel the Rebirth chambers. Overloaded grids sparked dimensional rifts, pulling shadows from Giratina's realm, echoes of those failed fossil clones from Cinnabar, now twisted further. Trainers sent to contain outbreaks reported Delta Swamperts summoning lightning storms over oceans, their dual essences clashing like thunderheads in a bottle. The air grew thick with ozone and regret, facilities crumbling as the very ground rejected these forced hybrids. Why are these Delta species considered glitches in the natural order? Because true rebirth, whether Ho-Oh's resurrection or Celebi's time pull, honors balance. Elements align like threads in a tapestry, woven by the world's unseen hand. But Hoenn's method tore those threads, splicing fire into grass without sacrifices purifying fire. The result? Pokémon that exist as errors in the code of creation. They reproduce rarely, their offspring glitching into formless blobs before stabilizing or exploding in bursts of raw energy. In battles, they flicker, types shifting mid-strike, confusing even the Pokédex. Giratina, that janitor of distortions, senses them as trash to be swept away, which is why Hoenn's ruins swarm with otherworldly howls at night. Whispers from surviving scientists paint a darker picture. The berserk gene, traced back to Mewtwo's labs, was a diluted Hoenn serum, meant to mimic awakening without the full horror. Yet even diluted, it drives Pokémon mad, stats surging until bodies give out, just like those early Delta failures piled in unmarked pits beneath the reactors. The projects were abandoned not from ethics, but survival. The final log warns of a chain reaction where Delta energies threaten to rebirth the entire region into a chaotic soup of elements. You can still feel it today if you venture to Hoen's edges. The crystals hum faintly, attuned to anyone with a Pokémon at their side, drawing out latent glitches. A traded evolution might warp unexpectedly, echoing those Linkstone sacrifices but amplified into nightmare. This is the abyss Rebirth stares into when forced Delta species as harbingers, proving that some cycles demand to stay broken. And as we pull away from Hoen's poisoned glow, a new shadow emerges from the harvest fields stained by these experiments. Coming up in Chapter 19, the King of Bountiful Harvests, we uncover the legendary figure who turned abundance into something far more sinister, feeding on the very glitches these projects unleashed. Stay with me. Those Hoenn experiments didn't just warp elements, they ripped at the very essence of Pokémon, forcing rebirth through raw, unstable energy that left scars no amount of power could heal. But far to the north, in the frozen wilds of Galar's crowned tundra, a different kind of sovereign ruled, one whose touch brought life without the agony of violation. Calyrex, the king of bountiful harvests, emerged from legend as a spectral guardian of renewal, its tiny form belaying a psychic might that once turned barren fields into endless golden waves. You can almost feel the chill winds sweeping across the tundra, carrying whispers of a time when Calyrex rode at the head of a royal court, its loyal steed thundering over snow-swept plains. Villages bowed in reverence, crops bursting from the earth in defiance of the eternal winter. Yet prosperity faded into myth when the king vanished, its castle swallowed by vines and ice, the land reverting to harsh desolation. Legends spoke of a spirit, unbound, wandering unseen, waiting for those pure enough to glimpse it. And when the crowned tundra's Dynamax energies stirred ancient powers, Calyrex returned, not as a conqueror, but as a healer of what had been broken. At the heart of Calyrex's legend lies its uncanny ability to mend the spirit, a gift that weaves directly into the rebirth mechanic we've been unraveling. Unlike the crude resurrections of Ho-Oh, which pull bodies back from ash at a terrible cost, or the berserk awakenings that burn out their hosts, Calyrex doesn't force life into dead flesh. It reaches into the fractured soul of a Pokémon, or even a land itself, stitching ethereal threads to restore harmony. Imagine a wilted forest, its trees hollowed by blight. Calyrex's psychic aura flows like liquid light, mending the spiritual rot that chokes growth. This isn't mere revival, it's rebirth refined, where the spirit is purified before the body follows, ensuring the renewed form blooms stronger, untainted by the violence of prior experiments. This mending power draws a sharp line in the crown tundra between growth and resurrection, two paths to renewal that couldn't be more opposed. Growth, under Calyrex's reign, was organic, a symphony of psychic energy coaxing seeds from frozen soil, herds multiplying across meadows that shouldn't exist in such cold. It was the king's promise, abundance without sacrifice, cycles of life ebbing and flowing naturally, as if the tundra itself breathed in rhythm with the harvests. Resurrection, though, that's the shadowed counterfeit we've traced from Cinnabar's labs to Holand's reactors. It demands payment in blood or energy, yanking existence from oblivion through force, often leaving echoes of rage or instability. In the Crown Tundra's lore, desperate folk tried mimicking Calyrex's gifts with forbidden rituals, but their resurrections birthed twisted abominations, spirits half-mended, rampaging through the snow. The king knew the peril. True growth nurtures, resurrection devours. Yet, even Calyrex's benevolence hides thorns, rooted in the dark history of the reigns of unity, forged not for harmony, but as a ruthless control mechanism. Ancient texts, etched into the overgrown ruins of the king's castle, hint at a betrayal long buried. The Reans weren't born of loyalty, they were crafted by scheming nobles, alchemists hungry for the king's power. Woven from spectral fibers and infused with Dynamax crystals, these reins allowed Calyrex to bond with its steeds. Glastria, the icy titan, and Spectria, the ghostly wraith. But the truth festers deeper. The nobles designed them to bind the king's spirit, turning its mending gift into a leash. Slip the reins onto a steed, and unity forms, but at what price? The king's psychic essence floods the mount, dominating its will, forcing a fusion that amplifies strength while eroding autonomy. Glastria's brute charge becomes unstoppable. Spectria's shadow gallop drains life from foes, but the steed's eyes glaze with suppressed fury, their spirits mended only to serve. Whispers persist of failed bindings, where the reins snapped under the strain, unleashing steeds feral and unbound, trampling villages in vengeful harvests of destruction. Calyrex, once tricked into donning them, wandered fractured, its court shattered, the land withering as the control took hold. Even in modern tales, trainers who rediscover the reins feel the chill, the psychic tug demanding submission, a rebirth twisted into enslavement. This was no accident. It was engineered dominance, the rebirth mechanic's darkest pivot, where mending becomes manipulation. The Crown Tundra's blizzards howl these secrets still, urging us toward anomalies that defy even Calyrex's grace, glitches in the code of reality itself. In Chapter 20, The Glitch Pokémon Phenomenon, we'll uncover how corrupted rebirths birth digital ghosts haunting the games, malformations that make Delta species look tame. What happens when the spirit can't be mended, only endlessly rebooted into madness? Stay with me, the unraveling deepens. I hope you're as amazed by this as I am. If you want to stay updated on more content like this, make sure to subscribe and join our community of curious minds. Trust me, what's coming next will challenge everything you thought you knew. While Calyrex offers a gentle mending of fractured spirits in the frozen wilds of the Crown Tundra, drawing a clear line between mere growth and true resurrection. The rebirth mechanic reveals its ugliest scars when that process shatters at the most fundamental level, right down to the code that defines a Pokémon's very existence. You've heard the legends of Ho-Oh's rainbow wings igniting new life from ash, or Celebi weaving timelines to pull souls from oblivion. But what lingers in the shadows of Kanto's coastline, where the sea crashes against jagged rocks, are echoes of rebirth gone catastrophically wrong. Glitch Pokémon aren't just programming errors. They're digital ghosts, remnants of creatures that the world tried to bring back but couldn't quite reassemble. Take the Cinnabar coast, that fog-shrouded stretch off the island's eastern edge. Fishermen whisper about it even today, avoiding its waters after dusk. Dive too deep there, glitch your save file with the old bird glitch, or swim into forbidden map boundaries, and something stirs. Shapes flicker in the waves, half-formed bodies twisting through the pixels, eyes glowing with corrupted data streams. This isn't random, it's a pattern rooted in the game's earliest code. The theory that the Cinnabar Coast is a graveyard for deleted souls holds weight when you consider how Generation 1's memory banks worked. Pokémon data wasn't always cleanly erased. Failed loads and overflow errors dumped incomplete entities into buffer zones, invisible until you poke the edges of the world. These aren't alive in any natural sense. They're fragments, snippets of Pokédex entries, stat blocks mangled together, sprites stretched and warped like flesh pulled through a meat grinder. Remember catching M, the aquatic abomination that floods your 6th slot with garbage data? Or the eerie silhouettes that replace your team, their cries distorting into static bursts that echo like drowned screams. Programmers buried these in the ROM to handle memory glitches, but lore hunters see deeper intent. What if Cinnabar, with its volcano-scarred earth and Mewtwo labs nearby, became a dumping ground for experimental rebirths? Sylph Co. Is failed revivals, Team Rocket's genes, splicing horrors, souls deleted when the process hit critical errors, their essence exiled to the coast's limbo. And at the heart of this digital necropolis stands Missing No, that infamous void bird, a data-level representation of a failed rebirth. It's not a Pokémon, it's the absence made manifest, a hole where life should be. Spawn it through the precise dance of glitches. Fly to the coast, switch items, dive just right, and it stares back with blocky nothingness. Its cry a piercing beep that rattles your speakers. Catch it, and your game warps. Hall of Fame photos stretch into infinity. Items duplicate into oblivion. But peel back the hex code, and Missing No reveals its true form. Its data overwrites empty slots in the Pokédex, pulling from unused enemy IDs, fusing bird family sprites with Family 24's placeholder junk. It's what happens when Ho-Oh's blessing, or whatever arcane rebirth mechanic the devs encoded, encounters incompatible essence. Imagine the ritual, a Pokémon on the brink, its spirit shattered by battle or experiment, fed into the reawakening process. In cleaner lore, like the awakening in Reborn's shattered world, it surges with berserk power, stats exploding as latent potential ignites. Trainers there chase that high, pushing their partners to evolve beyond limits, but overuse it and the corruption sets in. Bodies destabilize, attacks misfire. The very air around them glitches with unnatural light. That's the warning sign. Scale it to Kanto's code, and the reawakening process corrupts the Pokémon's essence entirely. What was meant to rise renewed emerges as Missing No, a shell stuffed with bad sectors, its attack stat inflated to 255, while its name renders as question marks. Data miners have cracked it open. Missing No. His cry? A mangled sample from the game's sound bank layered over silence. Its learnt set? Glitches that teach impossible moves, like fly on a ghost type that phases through the earth. This isn't accidental. Early builds of red and green hid prototype resurrection mechanics, ties to the scrapped ghost ship off Cinnabar where deleted trainer data washed up. Players who soft reset obsessively, chasing perfect IVs, unknowingly mimic the lab's cycles, kill, reload, rebirth until the game spat back these abominations. One trainer's account from 1989 forums describes their Venusaur mutating post-Missing No encounter, leaves curling into fractal patterns, poison powder spawning item dupes that crashed the cart. The essence, corrupted beyond salvage, leaked into the save file like radiation. The coast amplifies it. Surf there with a corrupted party, and the water's animation stutters, ripples freezing mid-frame, Pokémon sprites clipping into the horizon. Theories tie this to real-world dev choices. Nintendo's Famicom carts had volatile SRAM, prone to bit flips from battery drain, a Pokémon dying permanently. Its data decayed, reborn as gibberish on reload. Cinnabar's gym, buried under volcanic ruin, mirrors this, blames fire types as failed phoenixes, their rebirth stalled in ash. Poke around the invisible walls beyond the gym, and missing no. Variants swarm, tall grass ghosts, fossil skeletons reassembling wrong. The graveyard theory fits because these souls can't move on. They're trapped in limbo code, eternally glitching toward completion. Venturing deeper into fan dissections, some claim missing no embodies the rebirth mechanic's forbidden flip side. Ho revives the burned tower trio cleanly, but push it on a mass scale like Sylph's clone VATS, and you get glitches en masse. Mewtwo's birth was the success, the discards washed to the coast. Hex editors reveal strings in the ROM. Iro fails, half erased, linking to Family 150's empty slot. Catch enough glitches, and your game bricks, save corruption, mirroring soul deletion. It's poetic terror, the ultimate Pokémon, master of all types through data hacks, born from what the world rejected. These phenomena warn of hubris in resurrection. Calyrex mends with spectral rains. Glitches devour. Poke the coast wrong, and you're the next deleted soul, your trainer data flickering into the fog. But whispers persist of groups who worship these errors, seeking to harness the corruption for power. Up next, in Chapter 21, The Cult of the Phoenix, we uncover those fanatical trainers who've turned glitch rebirth into ritual, chasing immortality through the code's darkest prayers. What unholy pacts did they forge with missing no? Is void? But when a rebirth goes wrong, like with missing no, twisting a Pokemon's very code into something unrecognizable, you have to wonder if that corruption stems from a deeper ritual gone awry, one whispered about in the shadowed halls of Johto's ancient towers. Deep within the Pokemon world, secret societies have long gathered under cloaks of secrecy, worshipping the cycle of death, not as an end, but as the sacred forge for renewal. These groups, veiled in myth and bound by oaths sworn on flickering embers, see every feint, every fall in battle, as a holy echo of the Phoenix's blaze. Picture the windswept peaks of Ecruteak City, where the Tin Tower stands eternal sentinel against the night sky, its spire piercing clouds like a bony finger accusing the stars. Here, the cult of the Phoenix first took root, their origins tangled in the ashes of the Brass Tower fire over a century and a half ago. That cataclysmic blaze didn't just claim lives, it birthed legends. The rainbow Pokémon descended in a blaze of crimson feathers, resurrecting the three guardians lost to the flames, Suicune, Entei, Raikou, their bodies scorched husks remade in purifying fire. To the cult's forebears huddled in the ruins, this wasn't mere legend. It was doctrine. Death cleanses. Ashes cradle new life. They carved their sigils into charred beams, vowing to perpetuate that rhythm across the world. You can almost hear their chants rising on the chill drafts that snake through Johto's forgotten shrines, voices low and fervent, invoking the Phoenix's dual nature, destroyer and creator. These societies spread like smoke, infiltrating dojos, breeding grounds, even the gleaming stadiums of the Pokémon League. They preach that true power demands surrender to oblivion first, that a Pokémon's spirit must brush the void before it soars anew. And in their quiet machinations, they reshaped the very rules of battle itself. Their influence on the Pokémon League runs deeper than any champion's trophy case, embedding the fainting mechanic as a veiled sacrament. Why do Pokémon merely faint in official bouts, recalled to their Pokéballs teetering on the brink of true demise, only to heal at the Pokémon Center like clockwork? It's no arbitrary kindness from Professor Oak's network. The cult ensured it, lobbying in smoke-filled council chambers, arguing that outright death disrupts the sacred cycle. Fainting honors the Phoenix, a taste of death's embrace, followed by Rebirth's dawn. Trainers unknowingly partake in their right every gym challenge, every Elite Four clash, sending partners into symbolic pyres. Feel the weight of that hidden hand as you climb the Tin Tower's spiraling stairs, each step groaning under centuries of concealed purpose. At the summit, where the air thins to a razor edge and Ho-Oh's silhouette haunts the horizon, the cult performs their hidden rituals under veils of storm and starlight. No tourist witnessed this. The tower's guardians, spectral wisps drifting like lost souls, bar the unworthy. Initiates arrive at midnight, cloaked in robes dyed the hue of cooled lava, bearing offerings faded Pokeballs containing Pokémon teetering from exhaustive battles, their essences frayed to mimic the brink. They form a circle around a makeshift altar of brass and bone, the floor etched with spirals symbolizing the death-rebirth loop. Incense burns, thick with the scent of smoldering feathers and ozone, as the high priest intones ancient Jotonian verses. From cinders we rise, through shadow we purify. The ritual unfolds in phases, each more visceral than the last. First, they release the weakened Pokémon into the chamber's heart, where wind howls through arrow-slit windows, whipping their forms into frenzy. Chants escalate, calling Ho-Oh's name not as savior, but as arbiter of the cycle. The Pokémon faint one by one, collapsing in exhausted heaps, not dead, but echoing the brass towers fallen. Priests then sprinkle sacred ash, harvested from Ecruteak's eternal flames, murmuring blessings for swift renewal. If the phoenix deems the offering pure, a faint rainbow shimmers on the horizon, and the Pokémon stirs, invigorated, their stats subtly enhanced as if reborn stronger. But failures haunt these peaks, corrupted essences, glitching like missing no, banished to the tower's depths where they wander as digital ghosts, a warning etched in code. Whispers persist that League officials, descendants of cult bloodlines, attend these summits incognito, their presence ensuring fainting remains the global standard. Imagine an Elite Four member, mask slipped low, kneeling amid the embers, recommitting to the cycle that powers their empire. This isn't fringe fanaticism, it's the unseen scaffold holding Pokémon battles aloft. Every time your team member slumps in defeat, healed by Nurse Joy's ethereal glow, you're tracing their glyph. The cult's tendrils weave through Indigo Plateau's marble halls, where champions unknowingly pledge fealty by enforcing the no-kill creed. They've stifled darker evolutions, quashed tales of permanent losses in wild skirmishes, all to preserve the Phoenix's delicate balance. Venture too deep into their lore, and you glimpse the cost. Pokémon pushed to faint repeatedly, their spirits thinning like overused blades, risking true unraveling. Yet the Tin Tower rituals conceal even graver secrets. Eyewitness accounts from rogue monks speak of Phoenix trials, where elite acolytes pit legendary beasts against each other in unrestrained combat, allowing full death to summon Ho-Oh's intervention. The air crackles with raw power then, towers quaking as resurrection flames lick the night. Successful rites yield artifacts, feather talismans that mimic revive items on steroids, granting temporary invincibility. Failures, monstrous hybrids, beasts neither dead nor alive, sealed in the tower's sublevels, their cries echoing like missing no. Is warped cries in the Safari Zone glitches. The cult guards these abominations fiercely, for they prove the cycle's peril. Rebirth demands perfect sacrifice or corruption reigns. As Johto's mists swirl around the tower's base, you sense their gaze upon the world, ever watchful. They've influenced more than battles. They've scripted the narrative of renewal itself, from Ho-Oh's grace to the League's sanitized wars. But peel back another layer, and questions burn. What price do trainers pay for this engineered mercy? And how far does their doctrine stretch into evolutions that demand even steeper tolls? Up next in Chapter 22, the Mega Evolution Cost, we'll uncover the hidden sacrifices powering those dazzling transformations, the kind that make even the cult's Phoenix rites seem merciful. Stay tuned, because what trainers ignore could shatter their strongest bonds forever. Those shadowy cults of the Phoenix didn't just whisper about death's cycle from the fringes, they reached right into the heart of the Pokémon League, twisting even the spectacle of fainting into a ritual of temporary oblivion, a faint echo of resurrection that trainers accept without question. But peel back the glamour of the League's biggest draws, and you'll find something far more insidious lurking in the Kalos region's grandest invention: Mega Evolution. What if that dazzling transformation, the one that turns your loyal companion into a godlike force, exacts a toll so profound it borders on soul-shattering sacrifice? Deep in Lumio City's laboratory, Professor Sycamore kept a vault of forbidden notes, tucked away from prying eyes and eager trainers. These weren't the polished research papers he shared at conferences, celebrating Mega Evolution as humanity's harmonious bond with Pokémon. No, these were frantic scribbles, stained with late-night coffee and haunted by data he dared not publish. Sycamore documented the strain, not just the physical toll on trainers' bodies, the exhaustion that leaves them slumped after battles, but the deeper erosion on the Pokémon themselves. His findings revealed micro-tears in their life force, measurable drops in vitality that didn't recover fully between fights. Pokémon that mega-evolved repeatedly began showing signs of premature aging, dulled scales, flickering auras, eyes that stared a little too hollowly at their trainers. One entry chilled me the most: a Venusaur that, after 5 consecutive megas, refused to eat for days, its bulb wilting as if poisoned from within. Sycamore suspected it wasn't mere fatigue, it was the raw unraveling of their essence, a price paid in fragments of immortality. He cross-referenced ancient Colossian texts, dusty tomes from the Azoth Kingdom's fall, where scholars first whispered of eternal stones that held more than power, they trapped something alive. Megastones, Sycamore theorized in those hidden pages, aren't inert gems forged by nature or science. They're crystallized souls, harvested from ancient Pokémon who perished in cataclysmic wars eons ago. Picture it, the primal behemoths of old, their spirits condensing in the heat of extinction events, fury, and might frozen into quartz-like prisons. When a modern Pokémon touches that stone, sink through the keystone's pulse, it's not empowerment, it's possession. The crystal awakens, flooding the host with echoes of a forgotten rage, reshaping flesh and bone in an instant. But souls don't share lightly. Sycamore's experiments with spectrometry showed anomalous energy signatures, spectral residues that matched no living Pokémon, only fossils from the war that never was. He called them ancestral imprints, remnants so potent they could override a Pokémon's will, forcing evolution under duress. This possession manifests as a temporary rebirth, a fleeting resurrection of the Pokémon's primal ancestor right there in the heat of battle. Your Charizard doesn't just grow wings of fire for those precious turns, it becomes the Charizard of legend, the one that scorched kingdoms before time buried its kind. The Mega form isn't an upgrade, it's a spectral takeover, the ancient soul surging through the modern body like a storm through a fragile vessel. Trainers feel it too, that bond tightening to a razor edge, their own life force siphoned as conduit. Sycamore noted cases where wild Pokémon, stumbling upon loose megastones, underwent uncontrolled megas, rampaging until their bodies gave out, collapsing into husks that crumbled to dust. He even hypothesized the stones feed on the host's vitality to sustain the rebirth, growing faintly brighter with each use, hungrier for the next. Why else do mega-capable Pokémon faint faster post-transformation, their stamina charts plummeting like a candle snuffed out? Sycamore's fear deepened when he linked this to Kalos' own history. The ultimate weapon, that colossal skeleton beneath Geozenge, pulsed with similar energies, crystallized essences of countless lives, weaponized for annihilation. Mega Evolution, he wrote, was no accident of discovery. It was reverse-engineered from that forbidden tech, diluted for safe use in arenas. But safety's an illusion. His final logs described a Lucario under his care, its mega form so primal it turned on illusions of its trainer during tests, shattering containment glass with aura blasts born of ancestral vendettas. The Pokémon survived, barely, but its eyes never lost that feral gleam, as if a piece of the old soul lingered, waiting for the next call. Trainers chase the thrill, blind to the ledger of loss. Each mega evolution chips away at the soul's integrity, shortening lifespans by years, maybe decades. Sycamore buried these truths to protect the league's facade, but leaks surfaced in black market forums, veterans retiring early, their teams mysteriously retired to preserves, too frail for display. The Phoenix cults? They revered this, seeing mega stones as holy relics of the death cycle, stones that grant rebirth at the cost of eventual oblivion. Fainting isn't defeat, it's the system's mercy rule, pulling Pokémon back before the ancestral soul claims them fully. And as we trace this vein of crystallized torment deeper into uncharted lore, the shadows stretch toward Paldea's fractured timelines. Up next in Chapter 23, The Paradox of Paldea, we'll uncover how time itself warps the rebirth mechanic, birthing horrors that defy death's natural order. Stay with me, because what awaits there will redefine everything you've believed about Pokemon's endless cycle. Those crystallized souls trapped in megastones weren't the only ancient essences humanity dared to unearth and bend to its will. Far across the seas, in the sun-baked expanses of Paldea, another professor stumbled upon a far more volatile secret, one that twisted time itself into knots, birthing creatures that defied the very laws of nature. You can almost feel the weight of Paldea's rugged cliffs and sprawling grasslands, where the wind carries whispers of epochs long buried. But beneath it all lies Area Zero, that forbidden crater at the island's heart, a scar on the earth pulsing with an otherworldly glow. It's there, in those depths, that Paradox Pokémon first clawed their way into our world. Great tusk, roaring like a mammoth from forgotten eons. Iron treads, a mechanical behemoth straight out of some dystopian tomorrow. Roaring moon, with wings that slice the air like obsidian blades from a prehistoric nightmare. Sandy shocks crackling with electromagnetic fury that no modern magneton could rival. These aren't just oddities or regional variants. They're paradoxes, echoes that shouldn't exist. Scholars in the Pokémon world, and theorists like us, have long debated their true nature. Are Paradox Pokémon reborn versions pulled from the past or future, yanked through rifts in time by some cataclysmic force? Or are they hallucinations, projections born from fractured minds, illusions so vivid they manifest as flesh and fury? The evidence piles up like debris in Area Zero's chasms. Witnesses describe them flickering in and out of reality, their forms shimmering as if caught between timelines. Terapagos, the hermit crab-like legend at the crater's core, seems to anchor them, its shell a mosaic of crystalline facets that refract light into impossible colors. Yet when you battle one, they bleed, they faint, they obey Pokeballs just like any other. Hallucinations don't leave footprints in the mud or scorch marks on stone. Dive deeper into Area Zero, and the crystals reveal their sinister role. Those glittering spires jutting from the cavern walls like frozen lightning aren't mere geology. They're the medium for the rebirth mechanic, conduits that channel raw temporal energy. Touch one, and visions flood your senses, dinosaurs thundering across plains that haven't existed for millions of years, or sleek robots patrolling sterile megacities yet to rise. The crystals don't just preserve, they rebirth. They pull fragments of Pokémon essences from across the time stream, reassembling them into these hybrid horrors. Think of it as megastones on steroids, but instead of souls crystallized in stone, its entire timeline's compressed into prismatic lattices. The Terra phenomenon ties in here too. Those crystals amplify a Pokémon's type, forcing a rebirth of its very element. But at what cost? Shards flake off, embedding in flesh, warping bodies into terrestrial forms that glow with unnatural vibrance. Area Zero's depths hum with this power, a perpetual engine of resurrection, where death in one era fuels life in another. Professor Sada, or Turo depending on the path you tread in Scarlet or Violet, chased this dream with a fervor that bordered on madness. Picture her, or him, descending into those glowing abyss, eyes wide with the promise of rewriting history. Sada envisioned reclaiming the ancient past, taming those primal beasts to restore a lost golden age. Turo sought the future's innovations, machines that could propel humanity beyond its limits. They built the Time Machine, a colossal device fueled by Terapagos's boundless energy, punching holes in reality to summon their visions. But the rebirth mechanic has a cruel irony. It demands sacrifice. The machine didn't just summon paradoxes, it ensnared its creator in an endless cycle. Sada's notes, scattered like digital ghosts in the crater's archives, paint a harrowing picture. The first summons worked. Paradoxes poured through, loyal at first, their roars echoing triumph. But the crystal's energy backlashed. Time folded in on itself, aging the professor in moments or unraveling their youth into frailty. The body withered while the mind raged on, trapped in a loop of rebirths that never quite took. Desperate, they crafted an AI double, a perfect replica to continue the work, uploading their consciousness into cold code. Yet even that failed. The AI, watching its organic self crumble to dust, inherited the cycle's curse, haunted by glitches that mimicked the professor's final screams. Sada/Turo became the ultimate victim, not of paradoxes or crystals, but of their own hubris, reborn endlessly as echoes in the machine, forever chasing a horizon that recedes with every step. The players, you, the young trainer, stumble into this web, sealing the rifts, calming Terapagos, but the damage lingers. Paradoxes roam free in hidden groves, crystals pulse undimmed, and the professor's shadows whisper from every reflective surface. Is this the rebirth mechanic's pinnacle? A dark symphony where time devours its conductors? Or just the prelude to something buried even deeper in the earth itself? As the echoes of Area Zero fade, we turn our gaze to the soil that remembers every footfall, every battle, every forgotten pact. Chapter 24. The memory of the land uncovers how the ground beneath our Pokemon's feet holds grudges older than the stars, and the terrifying way it might awaken to claim its due. Stay with me. You won't want to miss what the earth has buried for you. Those shimmering crystals at Area Zero, gateways to fractured timelines where paradox Pokemon flicker like ghosts of what might have been, hint at rebirth's fragile edge. But turn your gaze to the fractured streets of the reborn region, where the ground itself groans in protest, and you'll uncover a rebirth far more visceral, one that's ripping the land apart from within. In Reborn, the air hangs heavy with the scent of scorched earth and ozone, a perpetual storm brewing beneath the surface. Earthquakes strike without mercy, swallowing boulevards whole, toppling the skeletal remains of once proud skyscrapers into yawning chasms. Trainers whisper that it's just the region's curse, a badge of its grit, but dig deeper into the shadows of its underbelly, and the truth uncoils like a serpent from the soil. These tremors aren't random fury, they're the land's raw, agonized scream against soul grafting, the forbidden alchemy powering the link stones that trainers clutch like lifelines. Picture the first link stone's creation, forged not in some sterile lab, but in the fevered rituals of Reborn's hidden alchemists. Traditional evolutions demand a trade, a willing exchange of souls between Pokemon and human, a dance of mutual growth. But soul grafting? It severs that bond, yanking a Pokemon's essence raw from its core and fusing it forcibly with another's, bypassing nature's rhythm. The stone glows with stolen light, veins of ethereal blue pulsing like exposed nerves, and when activated, it doesn't just evolve, it rewrites. A Riolu becomes a Lucario not through harmony, but through violation, its spirit grafted onto a template borrowed from the void. The land remembers. Every grafting leaves a scar, an echo of displaced souls reverberating through the earth's ley lines. Reborn's trainers, desperate in their war-torn world, turn to these stones on a massive scale. Factories churned them out by the thousands. Black market dens glowed with their unnatural fire, and every corner of the region became a forge for forced rebirths. The soil drank in the excess, fragments of souls too volatile to contain, seeping into aquifers, crystallizing in cavern walls. Feel the weight of it. Mountainsides that once stood eternal now shudder as if feverish, rivers boiling with spectral mist, forests twisting into grotesque parodies of life, branches clawing at the sky like pleading hands. This environmental toll mounts relentlessly. Link stones demand equilibrium, a balance of life force drawn from the world around them. Used sparingly, they might pass unnoticed, a ripple in the pond. But flood the region with them, and the pond becomes a maelstrom. Ley lines overload, snapping like overstretched tendons. Earthquakes erupt as the planet convulses, purging the corruption in violent heaves. Entire ecosystems collapse. Pokémon herds stampede from poisoned groves, where berries swell unnaturally large before bursting into ash. The skies darken with flocks of starly whose eyes gleam with grafted madness, plummeting in synchronized suicide. The ocean off Reborn's coast froths with bioluminescent rage, whales breaching with linkstone shards embedded in their flesh, their songs warped into dirges that drive fishermen mad. Whispers among the survivors speak of ancient texts unearthed from Reborn's deepest bunkers. Scrolls etched by hands long turned to dust. They foretell the prophecy of the final awakening, a cataclysm born from this unchecked grafting. When the soul fragments reach critical mass, coalescing into a singular, world-ending entity, the land will birth its ultimate child. Not a Pokémon, not a legend, but an abomination of every stolen essence, awakening to consume all life in a blaze of purifying rebirth. The quakes are merely the prelude, contractions heralding this monstrous delivery. Forests will ignite from within, cities fold into the abyss, and the skies will rain shards of crystallized screams until nothing remains but silence, an eternal, flawless void. Trainers who've witnessed the fissures firsthand describe it viscerally. The ground splitting with a sound like tearing flesh, hot vapors rising laced with the faint coppery tang of blood that isn't there. One survivor, a grizzled miner from the Obsidia slums, swore he heard voices in the rumble fragments pleading for release, their grafted forms unraveling thread by thread. The alchemists who birthed the stones knew the risks, their tomes warn of the memory of the land, and primal consciousness woven into every root and stone, intolerant of such desecration. It fights back, not with claws or fangs, but with the inexorable force of geology itself, reshaping Reborn into a graveyard for the reborn. Yet the cycle tempts onward. Even as cracks spiderweb across the region's heart, more stones circulate, promising power amid the ruin. The prophecy looms, its final awakening whispered in fever dreams by those who've pushed too far. Will the land forgive, or will it claim its due in full? As we shift from the Earth's vengeful memory to the weight it places on those who wield this power, Chapter 25, The Trainer's Burden, reveals the hidden fractures in every bond you thought unbreakable. What happens when your own soul begins to graft with the darkness? Those tremors ripping through Reborn aren't just the Earth's revenge for soul grafting. They're the echo of something far more personal, the quiet fractures forming in the hearts of trainers who dare to wield link stones like weapons of fate. You've felt it yourself, haven't you? Late at night scrolling through those old forums, reading accounts from veterans who pushed their teams too far, watching as the ground split open and their Pokemon's eyes glazed over with that unnatural hunger. But what happens when the land heals and the trainer doesn't? What lingers is the shadow of a choice, one that turns every battle into a moral tightrope, the Nuzlocke philosophy, twisted through the lens of a world built on rebirth. Picture the dusty trails of Johto, where Ho-Oh's rainbow wings once promised resurrection after the brass tower burned, reviving those 3 Pokémon from ash into legend. In that same world, trainers started whispering about rules to make victory mean something real. No items in battle. Nickname every catch, so they become more than data. And the hardest one, if a Pokémon faints, it's gone forever. No revives, no Pokémon centers, no second chances. They called it Nuzlocke, after a glitchy worm that burrowed into hearts and minds, but in a reality where rebirth pulses like a heartbeat through the legends, it becomes something profane. You're not just playing a game anymore, you're playing God in reverse, denying the very cycle Ho-Oh embodies. Why impose death when the phoenix rises every time? Is it to honor the wild's brutality, or to chase a thrill that official leagues water down with their endless heals? Trainers who swear by it talk about purity, about forging bonds unbreakable because they're fragile. You release a fainted Charmander into the woods, its flame flickering out in your mind's eye, and suddenly every level up feels earned, every gym badge a scar. But peel back the romanticism, and you find the rot. In fan circles deep in the reborn underbelly, they've layered it with the awakening mechanic, that berserk rush where you force your Pokémon into overdrive, stats exploding like a star going nova. One dose, and your little buddy turns primal, claws elongating, roars shaking the arena, tearing through foes with power borrowed from some ancient fury. It's rebirth inverted, not gentle renewal, but a violent shattering and remaking. They glow with that eerie purple haze, eyes rolling back to whites, and for those 15 turns you're invincible. Yet overuse it, and the cracks show. Your Pikachu doesn't just tire, it fragments. Fur singes from within, movements twitch like corrupted code, and sometimes it doesn't come back right. Trainers report it in hushed streams. The berserk state leaves psychic residue, nightmares bleeding into their sleep. You witness your partner, the one you've raised from a level 5 scrub, twist into something unrecognizable, foam at the mouth, slamming into walls post-battle because the power won't fade. One veteran from the reborn circuits described it like this. After his Lucario went berserk against a rival's team, it turned on him mid-cooldown, raking gashes across his arm before collapsing. He still has the scars and the dreams where those golden eyes bore into him, accusing. The psychological toll piles up: insomnia, paranoia that every feint is a scream you ignored. Forums overflow with dropouts, trainers quitting after one too many berserks, haunted by the question, did I break it, or did it break me first? And here's the knife twist that keeps you up. Does a trainer truly love their Pokémon, or just the power of their awakened form? You grind for hours, catching only the first encounter per route, permadeathing the rest, all to feel that godlike rush when your team awakens in sync. But love? Real love doesn't demand sacrifice at sword point. In Kanto's shadows, we're missing no. Glitches whisper of failed rebirths. Nuzlockers justify it as training for the wild's truth. Pokémon faint in nature, they die. Yet, Ho-Oh's lore mocks that. Resurrection isn't a cheat code, it's the natural order, a gift to balance the losses. Push Nuzlocke too far, blend it with Berserk's frenzy, and you're not preserving life, you're gambling souls for badges. Elite Four challengers crack under it, stories of grown adults sobbing over a fainted Eevee, deleting saves because the game's mercy feels like betrayal now. You've seen the art, the fan comics where trainers cradle dissolving pixels, realizing too late that their burden was selfishness dressed as discipline. It seeps into the pros too. Rumors from Paldea's fringes say some paradox hunters run secret Nuzlockes, denying Area Zero's crystals to their catches, forcing raw rebirth through trauma. The land quakes, as we saw with those linkstone grafts, but the trainer's mind quakes harder, flashbacks to berserk roars echoing in empty gyms, the weight of choices that no Ho-Oh can undo. They start seeing their teams not as friends, but as tools sharpened on the whetstone of loss. One leaked journal from a reborn modder confesses, after 10 runs, each with a different starter permadeathed, he couldn't bond anymore. Every battle felt hollow, every win tainted by ghosts. The ethical dilemma stares back from every Pokédex entry. In a world of rebirth, Nuzlocke isn't challenge, it's cruelty cosplaying as commitment. Those fractures don't heal with a full restore. They widen, pulling trainers into isolation, second-guessing every command. You bond over shared pain in Discord servers, trading war stories of the one that got away, but beneath it, a quiet madness brews. Berserk's glow fades, leaving hollow shells, and suddenly you're questioning the league itself. Do champions run Nuzlockes in their hearts, culling the weak for glory? The philosophy spreads like a virus, infecting ROM hacks where awakening becomes mandatory, turning every playthrough into a funeral procession. And through it all, the real burden settles. You're not just risking pixels, you're risking your humanity, one feint at a time. But what if this trainer's weight traces back further to the very first fragile shell that hatched into our obsession, the hidden truths buried in the origin of the egg? Stick around, because what we uncover next will make every Pokémon you've ever loved feel like a lie waiting to crack open. But in this endless cycle of rebirth, where a fainted Pokémon rises again and again, what becomes of the ones who don't just faint? What happens when they truly perish? Their essence scattered like ash in the wind. You've pondered the trainer's heart in the shadow of Nuzlocke, questioning if it's love or power that binds you to your team. Now consider the cradle of new life itself, the Pokémon egg, that fragile promise of tomorrow, glowing softly in the daycare's dim light. It's the one piece of the puzzle no one's ever witnessed unfolding. Trainers hand off their companions to those unassuming facilities scattered across every region, from the grassy fields of Kanto to the misty roots of Sinnoh, expecting nature to take its course. Weeks pass, maybe months, and suddenly, there it is, an egg, warm and veined with mystery, handed back without fanfare. But here's the chilling truth that keeps even the most seasoned breeders awake at night. The mystery of why no one has ever seen a Pokémon lay an egg. Not once in all the countless hours spent watching Pidgey nests or Vulpix dens in the wild or captivity. No labor pains echoing through the night. No shells cracking open from within a mother's body. Expeditions into deepest Johto forests, surveillance on breeding ranches in Unova, nothing. It's as if the act itself is erased from the world, a forbidden glimpse into the machinery of existence. Whispers among old professors and rogue researchers point to something far darker than biology. Eggs aren't born from flesh and blood, they're forged in the ether, repackaged souls of fallen Pokémon. Picture it, every battle lost for good, every wild encounter that ends in true silence, every forgotten companion left behind in tall grass. Their spirits don't dissolve into nothingness. They coalesce, drawn by an ancient pull, compressed into those pearlescent orbs we cherish as new beginnings. Ho-Oh's rainbow wings might herald resurrection for the chosen few, like the three beasts rising from Brass Tower's flames a century and a half ago. But for the masses, it's this subtle alchemy. A Rattata's fleeting spark, crushed underfoot in Viridian Forest, reborn as the shell cradling tomorrow's Raticate. The soul, stripped bare, repackaged, delivered anonymously to continue the grind. This isn't mere fan speculation. Fragments of lore support it. In the shadowed annals of Pokémon Reborn's fractured world, where earthquakes scar the land from soul-grafting experiments gone awry, linkstones bypass traditional evolutions, hinting at souls rerouted through crystalline proxies. Mega stones, those crystallized essences Professor Sycamore dared not fully disclose, pulse with the same forbidden energy. And the eggs? They're the everyday miracle masking the horror, a global system ensuring no Pokémon line ever truly dies out. Paradox Pokémon flickering in and out of Area Zero's crystals could be echoes of this process, past and future souls tangled in the web. But who orchestrates it all? Who ensures these repackaged lives arrive precisely when needed? Enter the daycare man, that weathered figure behind every counter, his eyes sharp beneath a perpetual squint, hands calloused from cradling more than just Pokémon. He's no simple caretaker, he's the linchpin in the global rebirth conspiracy, a silent guardian of the cycle. From Route 11's humble shack in Kanto to the Fiori region's breeding dens, these men, and the shadowy networks they represent, serve as distribution points for the repackaged. Theories swirl that they're initiates of the cult of the Phoenix, the same societies pulling strings in the Pokémon League we uncovered chapters back. They receive the eggs not from laying, but from unmarked deliveries in the dead of night, couriers on Noctowl back, or perhaps spectral haulers tied to Ho-Oh's blessing. The daycare man's ledger, if it exists, would reveal patterns. Eggs appearing after mass faintings in tournaments, or spikes following trainer purges in regions like Reborn's devastated streets. He nods knowingly as you walk away with your new charge, complicit in the lie that life springs eternal without cost. Dig deeper, and the cracks show. Witnesses claim to have seen him slip into back rooms at dawn, murmuring incantations over glowing cradles, or vanishing into fog-shrouded roots where wild Pokémon graves dot the earth. In Paldea's highlands, daycare affiliates guard crystal outcrops, harvesting energies that mirror those birthing paradox forms. The awakening mechanic in rogue battles, that berserk surge with its deadly overuse, funnels excess souls straight into the egg forges. And the Nuzlockered adherent. Your permanent losses aren't endings, they're feedstock, repackaged under the daycare man's watchful eye, ready for the next trainer's ambition. Yet this system strains under its own weight. Environmental tremors in Reborn, the ethical rot in every trainer's choice. They're symptoms of souls overpacked, eggs hatching with glitches, Pokémon emerging haunted by fragments of their former selves. The cult pushes onward, Ho-Oh's renewal twisted into endless fodder for the League's spectacles. But what lies at the peak of this conspiracy, the ultimate purpose behind every repackaged shell? As the pieces align, the true architect emerges from the flames. Join me next for Chapter 27, The Final Ascension, where we unveil the endgame that binds every egg, every soul, every rebirth into one cataclysmic design. You won't sleep until you know. If eggs are the repackaged souls of Pokémon who've fallen in battle, shattered by a trainer's command or the wild's unforgiving claw, then a greater force must be at work, weaving those fragments back into new life, night after night, across every region. This isn't blind chance or some forgotten law of nature. It's deliberate, engineered, and it points straight to the heart of creation itself. Deep in the Sinnoh region's ancient myths, whispered by elders around flickering campfires in the shadow of Mount Coronet, Arceus emerges not as a distant god, but as the meticulous architect of the rebirth mechanic. The original one, they call it the Alpha Pokémon, who shaped the world from chaos using the plates of creation, fire, water, ground, every element forged into plates like cosmic circuit boards. Legends say Arceus birthed Dialga to command time, Palkia to stretch space, and Giratina to guard the Distortion world, a prison for what doesn't fit the perfect order. But beneath that grand origin story lies the machinery of rebirth, a cycle Arceus designed from the first dawn. Picture the Hall of Origin, high atop the mountain's peak, accessible only to those pure of intent. Walls etched with runes that glow faintly under moonlight, depicting not just creation but endless loops. Pokémon fading into mist, only to coalesce as eggs in hidden nests. Arceus didn't just make life, it built a system where death feeds back into existence. Souls harvested like data in an eternal server farm. Every feint in a gym battle, every permadeath in a trainer's hardest run, funnels energy upward. Ho-Oh's rainbow wings might resurrect the faithful few at the burned tower, but that's a mere subroutine. Arceus oversees the whole grid, ensuring no soul truly escapes. Why? Why does the original one allow this cycle of suffering and resurrection to continue, trapping billions in a loop of agony and fleeting triumph? It's not cruelty for its own sake, though the darkness runs deep. Arceus, in its infinite vision, sees stagnation as the true void. Without death's sting, without the raw grief of a Pokémon crumbling to pixels on your screen, there is no growth. Souls untested remain brittle. Trainers unchallenged stay mediocre. The rebirth mechanic is Arceus's forge, a brutal crucible where pain tempers power. Think of the paradox Pokémon in Paldea's Area Zero, twisted echoes from timelines unborn, or the earthquakes ripping through Reborn, echoes of soul grafting gone wrong. These aren't accidents. They're stress tests. Arceus permits the suffering because perfection demands evolution through fire. Resurrection isn't mercy, it's the hook that reels you back for the next round, stronger, hungrier, until the world's very fabric strains under the weight of recycled rage. Trainers feel it instinctively, that pull after a wipe the itch to reload, to hatch another egg from the daycare's anonymous clutch. But Arceus watches from the spear pillar, its wheel of plates spinning silently. The cycle sustains balance against the shadows, Team Rocket's genetic meddling, the Awakening's berserk fury that corrodes the body with overuse, even Nuzlocke's grim philosophy, forcing you to bury what you love. Without rebirth, darkness would consume all. With it, suffering becomes the price of eternity's game. And at the cycle's core lies the Azure Flute, that elusive artifact shrouded in diamond and pearl's unfinished code, a melody no player has truly heard. Crafted from the same ethereal blue as Arceus's own form, it's no mere summoner. Its secret meaning is the call to the beginning, the primal note that echoes back to creation's first breath, unraveling the rebirth mechanic thread by thread. Play it at the Hall of Origin's altar, and the flute doesn't just summon the original one. It offers ascension, a choice to break free from the loop, to ascend beyond repackaged eggs and endless respawns. Legends murmur of trainers who glimpsed this, flute in hand, only to shatter it in fear, dooming themselves to another lifetime of battles. The flute sings of origins untainted by death's recycle bin, a gateway where souls dissolve into pure light, no more suffering, no more hollow victories. Yet Arceus holds the flute's power in reserve, doling it out to the worthy or the desperate. In fan-told tales from Reborn's shattered streets, whispers persist of a final ascension, where the architect reveals itself not as tyrant, but as gardener pruning the wild growth of existence. You've chased this truth through Megastone's soul crystals, Paldea's hallucinations, Reborn's quaking earth, the trainer's buried guilt, and eggs that hatch ghosts. Now the pieces align. Arceus built the machine, fuels it with pain, and dangles escape just out of reach. But what lies past the veil, when the cycle frays at its edge? In Chapter 28, Beyond the Cycle, we'll uncover the voids waiting beyond Arceus's design, the rifts where rebirth fails and something far hungrier stirs. Stay with me, the endgame is just beginning. Arceus, the original one, didn't design this cycle out of cruelty alone. It built it as a fragile safeguard, a perpetual engine turning death into fragile new life, binding every Pokémon soul back into the world before the void could claim it forever. But that immortality? It's no gift. It's the Pokémon world's darkest truth, a shadowed eternity where no creature ever truly escapes the pain of existence. Feel the weight of it in the ancient towers of Johto, where Ho-Oh's rainbow wings first unfurled after the brass tower burned to cinders. 150 years before a child with a starter Pokémon steps into Rebirth Town, flames devoured 3 sacred beasts, Suicune, Entei, Raikou, their bodies twisted in agony as the structure collapsed around them. Ho-Oh descended, not as savior, but as executor of Arceus's mandate. It breathed life back into their charred forms, granting rebirth not through mercy, but through an unbreakable tether. Those legendary guardians rose anew, their fur singed with phantom scars, eyes hollow with the memory of that final scream. And they've wandered ever since, eternal sentinels in a loop that forces them to relive the fire's echo in every storm they calm, every rainbow they paint. This is the core of the rebirth mechanic's shadow, immortality as enforced recurrence. Pokémon don't die, they dissolve. Their essence fractures into raw energy, harvested by unseen currents beneath the earth, repackaged into those mysterious eggs no one's ever witnessed being laid. Think of the Nuzlocke trainer's grief, the one who blacks out a fallen ally on the route to Viridian Gym. That Pikachu doesn't ascend to some peaceful hall of valor. Its soul gets yanked back, grafted into a fresh shell. Memories partially erased, but traumas lingering like ghosts in the code. Awakening pushes it further, that berserk surge in Reborn's shattered streets, stats exploding as the Pokémon taps into forbidden reserves. But overuse? It corrodes them from within, veins blackening, forms destabilizing, until the next death rips them apart all over again. Layer that across the regions. In Paldea's Area 0, those shimmering crystals pulse with trapped echoes, paradox Pokémon flickering in and out, not travelers from past or future, but failed rebirths glitching through time. The land itself rebels in reborn, earthquakes splitting the crust, not from natural fury, but from the strain of mass soul grafting via link stones. Trainers there trade evolutions for these relics, forcing Pokémon into unnatural renewal, and the world cracks in response, poisoned waters bubbling up, skies choked with ash, a prelude to total unraveling. Arceus watches, sustains the machine, because without it, the primordial chaos before creation would swallow everything. Yet every cycle extracts a toll, souls fraying thinner, personalities eroding, bonds with trainers turning possessive, exploitative. Love. It's a lie we tell ourselves as we command another sacrifice for victory. You felt it in your own playthroughs, haven't you? That hollow thrill when a fainted Charizard revives at the Pokémon Center. Good as new, or so the nurse claims. But stare into its eyes next battle. There's a flicker, a weariness that wasn't there before. The dark truth crystallizes here. Pokémon immortality isn't eternal life. It's eternal torment, a cosmic battery farm where billions of souls grind through death after death, powering our adventures while their individuality dissolves into the collective hum of the plates Arceus shattered to birth the universe. And now, the final warning whispers from the fissures. What happens when the rebirth mechanic finally breaks? It's not if it's accelerating. Look to the signs we've traced. Paradox intrusions multiplying in Paldea, timelines bleeding into one another. Reborn's endless quakes widening into chasms that swallow cities whole. Ho-Oh's rainbows dimming, unable to fully mend the latest catastrophes. Arceus remains silent in its starry throne, but the plates tremble, ground shaking faintly under your feet, even in Sinnoh's pristine peaks. Imagine, no, witness the snap. Eggs cease forming, hatches yielding hollow shells or malformed horrors, souls too fragmented to coalesce. Pokémon deaths become final, bodies piling in the wilds, rotting under indifferent suns. Centers go dark, nurses fleeing as the machines whine and fail. Trainers turn feral, hoarding the last viable companions, battles devolving into desperate slaughters for scraps of power. The land starves first, grass types wither without soul-infused soil, waters stagnate without purification from reborn guardians. Legends rampage untethered, Mewtwo shattering labs in psychic fury, no reset to contain it. Kyogre flooding continents, unchecked by a cycled Groudon. Worse, the void rushes in. Arceus' safeguard crumbles, unleashing the pre-creation nothingness, the distortion world on a global scale. Giratina's realm spilling over, warping reality into infinite prisons of gravity and shadow. Pokémon scatter, devolving into primal beasts, trainers hunted as the architects of their endless cage. Humanity fractures too, we the players in this grand simulation, reduced to prey, our Pokédex's useless relics as the loop shatters. This is the reborn world staring back at us, not some distant fangame calamity, but our own reflection in the cycle's warped mirror. Every region we've conquered, every badge pinned to our chests, places us squarely within its loop. Are you the wide-eyed 10-year-old from Lavender Town, or the grizzled champion reliving the grind in remakes and sequels? The eggs in your party, the fainted allies waiting for white light, they're us too, repackaged dreamers caught in Arceus' indifferent design. We've romanticized the battles, the evolutions, blind to the machinery humming beneath. Step beyond the cycle, and the truth lands cold. Freedom means oblivion for them, revelation for us. The rebirth mechanic holds not out of benevolence, but brittle necessity. When it fractures, and the tremors say soon, the Pokémon world doesn't end quietly. It unravels in screams echoing across voids we can't comprehend. Yet here we linger, drawn back night after night, lulled by the familiar chime of a new game starting. What pulls you into the loop? Drift with that question as the stars wheel overhead, Arceus' gaze unchanging. What did you think of this journey? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this changed your perspective or taught you something new, consider subscribing for more mind-expanding content. And if you know someone who would find this as fascinating as you did, share it with them. These are the kind of conversations that matter.